Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I am JJWalsh and this is Seeking Sustainability Live. And to help me kick off this special 200th episode, I have Joan Bailey with me. Thank you so much for helping out, Joan.
No problem. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Now, to anybody who has watched this series, you might remember Joan helped me in the 100th episode and hopefully 300th into the future and beyond.
Yeah.
Is that
sounds good.
Too optimistic?
No, I don't think so.
Now, I have to apologize to everyone. For some reason, when I did the initial math for how long 200 minutes was, I thought it would be 3 hours and 33 minutes for some odd reason. It's really 3 hours and 20 minutes. So anyway, around that time is what we're aiming for. We're flexible in that way.
Sounds good.
But the challenge is to keep going as long as I can. I have a few quizzes along the way. And the first people to say the correct answer, I will send you a prize. So if you DM me your address afterwards, we'll have some fun along the way. You have some questions for me, is that right, Joan?
I do. But first I'm going to say congratulations, Joy, because it's so awesome. Like your episodes, all right, so I'm having a bit of a fangirl moment here, but I mean, the episodes are really interesting and you've talked to such a wide variety of people. And so I think I feel like I've learned a lot about what's going on in Japan and what's happening. And it's just, it's been really great. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for saying that. And that always, it's so amazing when people say that, or I see comments, people saying that they learned something or it sparked a new idea, or they sought someone out and like went to talk to them in person or went to talk to them on the side. You know, that's what it's all about. It's networking and, you know, sparking ideas and inspiring each other, because that's why I started it a year ago. You know, I was thinking back this morning to last March, and why did I start this series? Why was I doing so many? It was to inspire myself and to kind of see what people were doing outside my little circle. And so, it's really inspiring for me. So it really is rewarding when I hear that from other people. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. No worries. Because I really, I feel like you've expanded my circle and what I know about, and also sort of who I know about. It's really nice to sort of feel like, I don't know, I think it's really easy, pandemic aside even, like to feel like you're kind of alone in your efforts, or that everybody else is really far away or doing something, I don't want to say doing something really grandiose, but like you just don't, you sort of feel like it's either really big or you like washing your plastic to recycle it. Like, you almost feel like there's hardly anything in between. And I think what your show has illustrated is that there is this range, but we're all together and we're all sort of, doing different things at different levels. It's awesome.
Oh, so, yeah. Well, so many times in so many conversations, it comes up again and again that people are looking for options, better options, right? So people really are seeking sustainability.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
So it kind of grew. It grew out of me doing an event in person in Hiroshima called Seeking Sustainability. And that was the target of the event, is to kind of introduce sustainability ideas in a fun way. So we had a few short talks. We had vegan food on reusable plates and glasses. We also were trying to DIY something, make our own toothpaste or soap or things, And then this online series kind of grew from that idea that sustainability is something it's attainable. It's not out of our reach, and it's fun, and it's interesting, and it actually can enhance your life. And so I think, and I hope from all these, wide variety of talks we've had, that people are getting that feeling that it is attainable, it is fun, it is interesting, and it is kind of a goal that we all want to aim towards.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely think so. It's very heartening in a way, and that's really wonderful. And actually this brings me to one of my questions. So who haven't you talked to yet that you would really like to talk to?
Yeah, that is such a good question. That list in my head keeps getting longer. and yet there are so many people that have come up along the way because people have suggested them, or a guest knows somebody else who introduces them that I had no idea about, and then they've become on my wish list as well. So some people waiting in the wings, but I would, there's quite a few people that I would love to talk to, that I see in Japan Times that they're featured in doing a new business or a new wonderful idea. And anybody have an idea of someone you think is doing something interesting for the community, supporting the environment, please get in touch. There's a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet there are. Actually, I assumed it was going to be really tricky for you to narrow it down to just one. So, is there...
Hi, Tim.
You've covered...
Tim has joined from Yamagata. Thanks for joining, Tim. Congrats on 200 episodes, he says. Thanks. Aww. Couldn't have gotten here without you, Tim. He was one of them. We'll talk about you later, hopefully.
Okay. What was I going to say? And it's interesting too, because you've talked about such a wide variety of topics within sustainability, because I think often people have this really sort of narrow view of what sustainability is or could mean. And you've illustrated that it's all of these different things together. But was there anything surprising for you? Like, somebody suggested someone for your series and you were like, oh, I hadn't thought about not as part of sustainability. Was there anything like that ever?
I think, yeah, definitely when people suggest people that might be good in the series, first, I'm going to talk about it a bit later, but people who talked about house design, like building their own house, those ended up being such interesting episodes, talking to people who were so passionate they wanted to design and build their own house. And at first that doesn't seem as obvious in terms of sustainability, but definitely is connected, because it's about creating a design where you can take in the natural surroundings. So, for example, Shunsuke Iwasaki's house, that it was his dream to build his own house, and he designed it in a way where he could see the mountains from a round window on one side. He could see where the moon rises on another side. Like, he had thought about it so carefully for so long, and it was such a dream of his to build his own house. And then, of course, so many concepts of sustainability in terms of nature, in terms of social support, in terms of quality of life. Everything was playing into that so much. So yeah, that was kind of a surprise, and I love those kind of episodes where I didn't really expect it to be so connected, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. Is there a subject you still want to explore? Like, or something you want to take an even deeper dive into? Is there something still out there like that?
Yeah. I would say so many. We've had such a variety of topics. When I talked to an astrophysicist for the first time the
Oh
other
yeah,
day, oh my
Elizabeth Tasker.
goodness, yes.
Yeah,
How,
that was fast.
and then you're thinking, of course, talking about outer space has a lot of effect on how we think about how we live on planet Earth, and then the concept came up quite a lot, like, is there really another habitable planet if we mess up this one? And the answer is really no. We need to take care of this one because there isn't anything else. There is no planet B, as a lot of environmentalists like to say, right? Yeah, I love that. But quite often I'll be researching guests, and I choose them, and I'm happy to book them because I know there's something connected to sustainability. And when I start researching them, I find so much more. And then you're like, wow, this is great. It's like taking off the layers of an onion. You're like, oh, now I have too much to talk to you about.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
but that's great. I think that's really great. That's really good. Yeah.
And then some people have been very generous with their time and come back again and again, talking about different books that they've written, different topics. So, for example, Asby Brown has been back 5 times to talk about different subjects that he's an expert on. He's coming back again next week on yet another book. So he's just got so much areas of expertise. It's amazing. Hiroko
really
and
does.
Matt Alt and Hiroko Yoda talking about all their different books about the Attack series, ninjas, and Yude ghosts, and all the different topics. And they know so much detail about each book and each topic that it's really fun to talk about the different topics in different episodes.
That's really good. Yeah. And I saw you just had Lee Utsumi on again recently, which I was really happy about because I haven't been able to get over to her new shop yet. But yeah, that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
So,
well, the one with Lee this week, my internet at home was out. So we ended up having to transition to Instagram Live, Seeking Sustainability, which is the only one in the series on Instagram Live. And she was so nice to be so flexible and to change at the last minute, because I woke up to no internet at home and I was like, what am I going to do? Yeah. And we had really heavy rain the night before, and I was thinking, did the rain knock it out? And no, it was just I hadn't paid the provider. So it was a total mistake. Like the previous credit card had expired or something, so they'd been sending postcards. I missed it for 3 months. And you know how you have an internet service and a provider, and they're usually different? And I knew I was paying the internet service, and it was the provider I hadn't been paying. So, sorry, provider. Sort it out. They put it back on. They were very nice about it. Like, I called my internet service, and they're like, I don't think it's us. I think you're fine with us. And, you should call your provider. And I called the provider, and they're like, yeah, you haven't paid for 3 months.
Oh, geez.
I'm sorry, can I pay now? And he's like, yes, please. So nice, so polite. Melody Cook says, hi, goddesses. Thank you, Melody. Thank you so much for joining the series. Paul says, congratulations. Thank you, Paul.
Aww. Yeah, that's so nice. What was I going to say? Is there sort of flipping that last question a little bit about is there a subject that you wish people, like a sleeper subject, something you wish people were paying more attention to, that this one right here, or I mean there could be two, because I mean it is sustainability, so everything's connected, so you can have more than one. But are there one or two subjects that you're like, come on, pay attention to this? Is there anything like that you've encountered?
Yeah, and I think maybe the Akia and the remodeling old houses, moving out to the rural areas, I think those themes have shown to have a lot of interest from viewers in Japan, especially as we have more stay-at-home, working from home. People are considering, maybe I don't need to live in the big city. Maybe I can get a bigger house out in the country. So we have a few great episodes with people who've done that, who've remodeled their houses, who've started organic farming.
Right.
For example, the Nagis, they did that. They moved out of Tokyo and they started organic farming. They started a guest house out there. Of course, the guest house is really difficult during coronavirus. But, it's better quality of life for them. Jake Reiner out near Mount Fuji, he does a bunch of besso, so the second homes, which have become more popular for people moving out of the cities. I think we're going to see this more now that the coronavirus stay-at-home, work-from-home situation seems to be a longer trend. It's definitely going to be 2 years at least, right? So I think this trend of moving out of the cities, having a better quality of life, living in more natural areas, but still keeping a job where you work online, I think this is definitely going to become more and more important.
Yeah, I think so. I would agree, actually. And speaking of which, because your show was sort of, born out of the pandemic and your own desire to sort of connect with people during the stay-at-home period, which is still happening, obviously. Has your life changed by anything that you've learned or things you've heard from the people you've talked to?
Yeah, when I first started my own business in 2019, I was doing consulting. I was doing workshops for guides, training them how to be better guides for international visitors to Hiroshima. And since doing this series, I just have so many more stories. And part of being a better guide is, of course, talking about stories, right? So this is something I always say to them is make sure that you share great stories about what you're talking about where you are. So now when I do consulting trips out to rural areas, I have so many more examples of what people are doing in other areas which are successful, which I can tell to them in consulting. But also when I'm like guiding, I have so many other stories about what guides or what travel experts are doing in other areas of Japan. And I think in the future, when international tourists come back, these kinds of stories, which is not only about this small area, but it links this part of Japan to other parts of Japan, that adds so much more value to the future tourists, because I think the future of tourism in Japan and anywhere is going to be slower travel, longer travel, staying in one country, one area longer. So if we can link ideas or about different experts to collaborate with in other areas of Japan, that's so much more benefit to the visitors for sure. So it's really it's helped the way that I think about travel has definitely been influenced by so many of the great stories from the series. Thank you. Get Hiroshima gave me 1,000 yen for super chat. Thank you. Treat yourself to a well-earned glass of something nice. Nice. Is it too early to start drinking? I might have a drink at the end of 3 hours, not at the beginning.
There you go.
Just for the audience.
All right, maybe I'll come back. I'll come back for that, actually. I mean, I'm not leaving yet, but nonetheless, I'll come back for that and I'll join you. You shouldn't drink alone. It's dangerous.
That would be great. I would love that.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
please
do.
We'll sing you out. And by then, my cake will be ready for you.
Cake?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did I just let that secret out? Whoops,
think
Daisy.
you might have.
So please, there was nothing about cake. Nope. No, there's no cake here.
I think you said something. I
No,
think
no.
you said the
I said
cake word.
make. I said make.
For people who are just joining now, I should say at the 30-minute mark for this 3-hour marathon, every 30-minute mark, I'm going to try to do a little quiz. And if you are the first to write the correct answer, DM me your address. I'll send you something, little something nice. So we got 10 more minutes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joan.
Sounds good.
Do you have another question?
What was I going to say? Well, we were talking about slow, like how this series has sort of impacted you, and you were talking about how it's affected your guiding and thinking about more stories to tell, like as you consult with rural areas. And that made me think of another recent interview that you did with Hannah Kirshner, actually, because her new book coming out in March is really, I was lucky enough to get my hands on a review copy. And yeah, that if nothing inspires you to do like slow travel, it would be that. And I think, that's sort of that's another example of exactly what you're talking about. So,
and one really nice connection that Hannah's book brought up, because I also had a preview copy before we talked, and she is a very talented illustrator. She sketches along the way. And then it really reminded me of Asby Brown, who also does a lot of illustrations and sketches. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's other people in the series too, but those two, and sharing their illustrations of Japanese culture and Japanese like traditions, it just makes it easier to understand somehow through their illustrations instead of just a photo. I mean, both of them take beautiful photos as well, but I thought that was so interesting. What a beautiful book. Yeah.
Well, you should have them come back together and like do a chat with you.
That would
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
That would be, I'm going to write that down. That is an interesting idea. I want to do it. In fact, that's what I'm thinking, Joan, for the next season, the next year coming up. I would love to get similar or somehow connected theme people to join the same Seeking Sustainability as a follow-up talk. Oh, yeah. And then they would have questions for each other, and I'm sure they would play ideas off each other.
I think that would be fascinating. You should totally do that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one.
Great idea.
And that reminds me, also, so obviously right now we can't really go anywhere. We can, but it's not the best idea maybe. So when we're able to go somewhere, where is it? Is there someone you want to go and meet in person and say, hello, I'm really excited to finally meet you in person? Or you just want to see for yourself, like where they are?
I think recently, maybe especially because of the 10-year anniversary of the disaster in Tohoku and the rebuilding and the Michinoku Trail along the coast, I've met so many interesting people from the series who are developing and promoting travel in that Tohoku area. And I just, it's one of the areas of Japan that gets the least amount of visitors, both international and domestic. So that's where I want to go. That's where I want to promote and get people to go, because in the future of travel, we need to spread out more, but also to have more benefit to local areas. Oh, you're Kitty. Hello, Kitty.
Yeah, this is Stubbers.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
200 years. Oh, 200 years?
Episodes.
200 episodes.
200 episodes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Come to Niigata. Thank you, Melody. I'd love to go everywhere. I mean, I think that's the thing. We're all just dying to travel again. But I want to go somewhere where it's beautiful, where I can do a long walk, where I can meet interesting local people, And I just think that whole story of recovery in Tohoku is so powerful, especially this year.
Yep.
It's really...
Yeah.
Kitty, haha,
Yeah, yeah.
please come to Mount Haguro. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, being a mountain monk, that would be really amazing. I have to share my kitties now that you've shown your kitties.
Yes. Oh, please do. Please do.
Okay, this is kitty
Oh,
number 1.
Oh, look at that.
Ooh,
Hi.
ooh, this is Tuck.
Oh.
Hello, Tuck.
Hi. Oh, that didn't necessarily work. I'm doing the kitty kissy thing on camera.
You're sleepy. You're sleepy.
Oh, she's sleepy. Oh,
if I
man.
was more organized, I was gonna set up a kitty cam where it could
nice.
it could be a feed just watching the kitties. But I wasn't
yeah.
organized enough. But maybe someday I can set that up, and then we can switch to the kitty cam during the interviews.
Nice, nice. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Mendo, thank you. He says, wow, 200. Well done. You're on fire. Keep them coming. Up to 400 now. What? No. Well, that 100, 200 a year. So another year, maybe I could do 400. Wow.
I bet you could. I bet you could. Because I think there are a lot of people. And then here's my next idea for you. Please don't hate me. But you know, if you did part of the Michinoku Trail, you could broadcast live from there, and that would just be amazing.
Yeah.
And then I could join you. So I'm looking for an excuse to go back because we hiked part of it.
Oh, you did?
And we did, and I have to say that I would highly, highly recommend it. It's a really so beautiful, such great food, such great people.
I want to go. So Don, thanks for joining from Facebook. Don says, consider the Shin Etsu Trail too. Where is the Shin Etsu Trail?
Oh.
So many great trails around.
I have no idea.
Mendel says, what are the 10 sustainable things everybody can do right now in their life? Okay, go. 10. Reuse your own bottle.
Yep.
Basically, reuse your own containers. Every container, take it out, refill it at the tofu shop, right? Reuse bottles, containers, take your own bag. That's a no-brainer. Stop buying PET bottles. Like if you have to buy a drink, buy metal, buy glass. Don't buy the PET bottle. Oh my gosh, I've got 6 more.
How about buying maybe buying instead of buying new, try and buy used or secondhand.
Yes.
Because Japan has amazing secondhand stores.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And great value. You can get really high quality value stuff for secondhand. Awesome tip.
Yep.
Reuse your old materials. Now Mendel's an artist, so this is perfect. Salvage old wood or metal, reuse it in your designs. Lee had great ideas from this in her bakery. She had old wooden bread boxes that they've repurposed into a really cool counter. She has embroidery from her great-grandmother, pillowcases that they've repurposed into curtains. So repurposing vintage and heritage stuff and old stuff that's waste, that's awesome. I got 4 more. Eat less meat.
Yep. How less meat? Yeah.
Less
buy
meat,
from
less
your local
fish,
farmer.
more plants.
Find your local farmer.
Buy local, so more local foods. I got 2 more.
Learning to forage, I think, would be good.
We have an exciting talk coming up. Winifred Bird, she's talking about eating wild. So foraging for food in the forest.
Very nice. Yeah. Her book is also super beautiful. What
Last one,
else?
I got 1 more.
Of
course, walk or cycle or use public transport or an electric car charged by solar.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
the ideal.
Oh, good.
But
Nice.
I basically, I mean, those are great 10 tips. Thank you for helping, Joan. But basically, just always looking for better options. Like when you're in the store, I want to buy something, comparing two items, which one might be local, which one might have less plastic, which one might be more sustainable in some way. Just making better choices from what you have available. Right? Because it's you can't completely stop plastic. It's just not possible. You can't completely stop driving your car if you can't afford a new one, right? You just have to do what works for your life. Definitely. Wheel Woman, thanks Tina. She says, what about old houses versus new houses? Japan has so many great old houses. Yes, they do. Nice, yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier about remodeling old houses, moving out to the rural areas from the city. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Melody. She said, congrats, JJ. Have a great day. Are we at the 31 minutes? Are you guys ready for a quiz?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, my first question may be about gender. So in the series, have I had more male guests, people who identify as male, versus more female guests, people who identify as female? First person to answer gets a prize. I'll leave it out there.
That's a great question. Yeah.
So in terms of guests, have I had more male guests or female guests? And then in terms of viewers, it is the same. Is it more male viewers or more female viewers? Nice. Tina got it. She said male. Thank you, Tina. I will send you a small gift in the mail. Please send me your address. So really interesting. I counted all the guests, and we had a lot of repeat guests. We had a lot of couples. But there were 117 male guests and 106 female guests.
Still, that's quite good.
Very, very close. I was aiming for 50-50. I was going for a total gender balance, but that's not too bad. Not too far off. In terms of viewers on YouTube, 62% were male. And 37% were female. And I think this is quite typical for YouTube.
That's interesting. Although I have to admit, we have a shared account. And so when I log into YouTube, it's Richard. But really, it's me.
So I'm showing the gender split for the viewers below. And then a graph at the top, just for any data stat nerds out there. There you go.
Nice.
Now, age group. I thought age group was really interesting for the YouTube videos. Can you guess the most common age group of viewer? Yeah, this surprised me. It was 25 to 34 years old.
Oh. Wasn't that interesting?
Yeah, maybe that age group might be a bigger YouTube using group. Of course, stats would be different on Facebook or other of the platforms, but YouTube tells me all this data.
That's pretty cool.
The others don't. Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Huh. Very cool.
Did you have any more questions? Because I can let you go whenever you've got other things to do, I'm sure, today. It's up to you.
Yeah. I do have some more questions for you, but why don't I ask them when I come back at the end? Should we do that?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. I'll message you and see when I can pop back in. So, Joy, thank you. This was so fun. And yeah, it's really awesome to be. Thanks for asking me to be part of it.
Thank you so much, Joan. And thank you so much again for the 100th episode when you talked with me for the full hour. I appreciate that. That was great. Catch up.
My pleasure. Yeah, it was fun. All right. So I'll see you later this afternoon.
Okay. Sounds good. About 3 o'clock?
Find something sparkling.
About 3 o'clock? Okay. Awesome.
I'll message you.
Thank you so much. See you. Thanks, Joan.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're going to do another little short quiz in 30. So at the 60-minute mark, now we're at 35 minutes. Congratulations to Tina for winning the first quiz. I want to go through the episodes, if possible, and just talk very briefly about all the episodes. Now, I have already had a 100th episode special, so I wanted to start with the most recent and work down. So let's look at the list of the talks we had recently that popped up. So most recently, yesterday, in fact, I talked with Louise from the Peace Boat. And she was talking about all the wonderful activities and projects that Peace Boat is doing. It's based in Japan. They travel all over the world to do volunteer activities. They do SDG training on board as well. And in the series, I have talked to so many people who came from volunteer experience or work experience with Peace Boat. So that was so great to catch up with her and learn more about the organization. They've had a long history in Japan, and they've got a new design for a more sustainable cruise ship coming up, an eco ship. So that's really exciting. It was nice to hear about. And then a few days ago, I talked to Shu Matsuo Post. He wrote a book about his feminist ideas and why he took his wife's name, which was really interesting. He wrote a book called I Took Her Name, and he was talking about not only feminism as a Japanese man, but we were also talking about how he felt more free as a Japanese man. He felt more free when he was abroad than in Japan, and he feels constrained, I think, as many of us do, by our own culture and our own social expectations on certain genders. So that was a really interesting talk with Shu. I really appreciated his point of view, not only about the need for gender equality, but the need for men to also accept and embrace their feminine side, as well as being free to take paternity leave. There was a lot of interesting things that came up. On Monday, or the end of last month, I talked with Rosie Galvan in Osaka, and she is starting to sell her beautiful vegan baked goods. So she has all these beautiful cakes that she makes in like a gorgeous 4-layer chocolate cake, or Pop-Tarts, or loads of different chocolates, and they're all made without eggs or dairy or butter. They're all completely plant-based vegan. And it was great to hear about why she started. Of course, she wanted to start because she couldn't buy any cakes that she really wanted to eat, which were vegan in Japan. I think vegan in Japan is still such a big hurdle. So it was so nice to hear from Rosie that she's going to try to open her own bakery, collaborating with other people in Osaka. It was interesting to hear about her getting the certification to sell food in Japan. She had to study hard in Japanese to pass the test. So there was a lot of interesting things that came up, mostly about collaboration that has helped her think about even starting her own business. So I don't think she would even consider starting her own business if she didn't get so much support from other people saying that her cakes were great and she should open a shop. And then it sparked an idea, oh, maybe I should open a shop. Whereas before she was just baking for herself and baking for others. Thank you so much, Zenith on YouTube. Love what you do. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you guys. and your support. There's no way I would have gotten to 200 episodes without all of you. So thank you. Last week I talked, so the next one down in the list, last week I talked with Justin Velgas in Tohoku. He's based in Sendai, not too far from Tokyo. It's very easy to get there. But we were talking with Joan earlier about how Tohoku area of Japan actually has the least amount of visitors, even domestic visitors or international visitors, but there is so much on offer. There are so many great hikes. There is so much culture. The food industries are very rich. We're going to talk a little bit later. Another woman who was in the series, Jess Hollums, was introducing how they're trying to collaborate with the fishing industry to make more sustainable oyster industry, more sustainable fishing, so that they can have more sustainable tourism in Tohoku in the future. Derek Yamashita, who's also in the Tohoku area, he does a travel company called Hidden Japan. And in the talk with him, he's also talking about working with local businesses, making them more accepting and welcoming to international visitors, making more English menus. Tim Bunting, who's also in that area, Yamagata area of Tohoku, he introduced in the series about being a mountain monk and taking people on week-long or a few-day journeys into the mountains and practicing meditation and practicing being a mountain monk, which is very special part of Japanese tradition and culture, which most people don't get to experience. So all of those people are working so hard in the Tohoku area to really open that Tohoku brand in terms of travel destination for a whole new type of traveler who wants to spend a longer amount of time and more time and days in one area so they can have a deeper experience. Oh, thanks, Tim. Thanks for the mention. He says everyone come to Dewa Sanzan. That's the area where they do the mountain monk experience. Thanks, Tim. It looks really special and amazing. You can find Tim's talk in the series as well. I talked with Joan a little bit earlier about the next talk, talking to Hannah Kirshner. She's an author who is also, she illustrates some of the things she's doing. She had a really interesting story when she was living in New York, and they had a guest from Japan, and the guest brought all these beautiful bottles of sake, and they had a dinner party, and all the sake pairing of the different foods, and everybody had a wonderful experience. And she really liked his maikake apron, which is a traditional Japanese style apron, and she commented on it. Oh, I'd love to have an apron like that. And he said, well, you have to come and work in my izakaya, in my bar in the rural area of Ishikawa, I believe. And then she said, okay. And he said, you got to come for 2 months. And she said, okay. So she did. And so she's been living back and forth between her home in New York and Ishikawa, where she's been brewing sake, where she's been growing organic rice, where she's been learning how to turn wood with artisan there. So she's had so many beautiful, wonderful experiences with traditional Japanese craft, traditional Japanese art, learning from the local entrepreneurs who have started their businesses in that rural area. So it's a lot of young people who have moved into the area, but doing traditional craft. It's really interesting concept of rural revitalization in that way. Yeah, so that was really fun. Let me take a drink of water. All right, the next, I mentioned talking to Joan as well. I was talking to Dr. Elizabeth Tasker about space and her job as an astrophysicist. And I just heard on Stephen Colbert last night, he was talking to an astrophysicist. And it's such a funny idea, but it often comes up, people asking, is there another planet that we can move on to? So talking with Elizabeth Tasker and her knowledge from working with JAXA, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Organization, and her job giving information, but also teaching about astrophysics to her students. And there was so much wonderful insights from her book, a lot that I couldn't really understand. But even from the few concepts that I could understand, it made it very clear that we need to take care of the planet that we're living on and not think about giving up on this one and going somewhere else, because that doesn't seem very possible. So in terms of sustainability, it's very important to also keep in mind what's happening with space exploration, what's happening with other planets, because there is no other place like Earth. This is very special. We need to take care of where we are. Thank you. Congrats for 200. All the best for the next. Thank you so much. From YouTube, thank you so much. Athonosios Sikonos. Thank you so much. The next talk we were talking about a little bit earlier as well is Asby Brown. And Asby Brown has been in the series a few times, talking about his different areas of expertise. And this time he was talking about beautiful small home designs in Japan. And a lot of the ideas that we talked about, even if you have a small house, but you are able to create spaces where you can take in natural light, makes you feel like your house is much bigger than it is. There were some of the houses in the talk where they were in the urban center, so they weren't in the rural areas, but they designed a window at the top of the room, for example, so that they would still have privacy from the nearby buildings, but this high window took in the nearby forest or the nearby trees or the nearby mountains. And so they were able to borrow this outside natural view to create a feeling of more space inside their small house. And I thought that was such a beautiful concept, and the whole idea of putting more thought into your design when you're designing a house, instead of just choosing a cookie cutter design that the house seller has, but actually working with an architect to create a design that's going to bring in natural light, bring in natural views, and actually enhance your quality of life. So that was a really beautiful talk with Asby Brown. Thank you, Asby, for joining the series so many times. And the next talk, 191, talking with Daniel Moore. Daniel Moore used to work with Walk Japan on a lot of guiding walk tours. And he was talking about his new ideas for rural adventures in the Nagano area, and taking people on week-long guided tours into the rural areas. And this was the first time in all my talks with many different people in the travel industry, this was the first time that I talked to someone working in travel in Japan who was only offering tours or plans which were a week long. So this really is exciting because for me, in terms of sustainable tourism, in terms of the future of tourism, having week-long stays in one area or one rural area is so much more beneficial to the local people, to the local area, and uses a lot or about the same resources as a short stay. So in terms of sustainability, it makes a lot of sense to have slower travel where people stay longer in an area. It's more beneficial for them too, because they can meet locals and they can start to feel the feeling of people who live there, not just the feeling of being a transient short-term visitor. Whenever I travel, I love to stay at least 2 nights in areas, and then you start relaxing more. You start getting a feel for the area more. So I'm so glad that he's offering those kinds of travel plans in the rural area. And he's also a big fan of pickleball, which I hadn't heard of before. But pickleball is really a great sport in Japan, especially for elderly people. You can use the existing soft tennis or badminton courts, and it looks kind of like racquetball, but a little bit slower type of game. It looks really fun. Tina says, are you going to create a list of vegan, vegetarian cafe restaurants in Japan? I know there is one of sorts, can't remember the name. There are a few resources. So for example, Happy Cow has good listings of vegan, vegetarian restaurants around Japan. Paul and his team at Get Hiroshima, they worked with the Chugoku area and made vegan, vegetarian map for the area. Also Eco Local, Helene and Noriko, they're working on a new app system which not only tells you where the vegan, vegetarian places are, but it also tells you where shops are which are more sustainable. So for example, if there's a shop that you can take your own container and they can sell you the tofu or whatever the goods is, and you use your own container, so there's very little plastic waste, that's more sustainable, and that would be on their map. So that's very exciting, and that's coming up soon. Helene was in the series talking about Eco Local, and that's something I'm working with her as a collaborative effort. Maybe you can start seeing more of that towards the end of the year. We're just getting started now. Thanks for the question, Tina. We have another question. I can see this program on YouTube, but not here on Facebook. Why? But okay, well, if you're commenting, maybe you can see it on Facebook now. It should be multi-streamed. A few people ask me about that quite often. How do I multi-stream, or why do I multi-stream? I know a lot of people who just do Facebook Lives or who just do Instagram Lives, but these topics of sustainability are so wide-reaching. Some of them are about travel. Some of them are about living a more eco life. Some of them are about being an activist. Some of them are being about a sustainable business, or an entrepreneur, or even a coder. So because the topics are so wide-ranging and sustainability is so connected to these wide-ranging topics, I really like the multi-stream, multi-platform release of these live talks, so that a wider variety of an audience can engage, ask us questions or comments, and get the information out there. And hopefully during this coronavirus time, when most people are staying at home, a way for people to get inspired or feel encouraged or spark new ideas about things that they can try. That's the whole concept for this talk show series. Thanks for your question. The next talk, we're going to finish this page and then I'll introduce another cat and we'll do a quick quiz for you. The next talk was with writer Melinda Jo, and she was talking about a lot of small restaurants and eateries and bars in Japan that she's covered. And she also knows about the sake industry and breweries. So talking with her about her insights into sustainable seafood, for example, or how the local businesses support local people in the area, but they're really struggling. One of the interesting conversations we had in that talk was about how even though there is a system in place for takeout right now, that a lot of small eateries or small restaurants, they really struggle to get enough revenue to survive just for takeout. So of course, if you're just getting takeout, that's a support for the business. But usually if you were eating in, you would spend longer there. So you would drink more or drink anything. You would get dessert, you would get appetizers. But if you do takeout, usually people are more conservative in how much they order. And of course, they're not allowed to order drinks and usually don't order desserts or things off the side menu. So that's a really interesting part of the coronavirus struggle that a lot of small restaurants, small eateries, and small businesses are having right now. So Melinda Jo has such great insights into the whole food industry in Japan. So it was wonderful talking with her about that. And the last one on this page, before we take a little break and talk to the kitties, is talking about eco hacks. We're talking with the Simple Environmentalist, and she has so many great ideas for things that you can do to be more sustainable in your life. She's living in Okinawa on base, and she's trying to reuse her containers whenever possible. One of the videos I saw, she is making a cup of coffee. So before she boils the water, she puts the water in the cup and then only boils that amount so that she's not using any extra energy than she needs. It's very smart. She's got lots of great tips like that. I also saw on her Instagram that she was part of a cleanup activity at the beach. She's very active, trying to reduce her waste in many ways and live her life in a more simple, environmentally friendly way. So that was really inspiring for me. Lots of great hacks there. All right. It is 2 minutes until the next quiz. So I will introduce another kitty for you. I know you guys are cuddling. You guys are cuddling. So this is Tick. Before I introduced Talk, they are twins, and they were born on our deck outside. Tick-tock. I trapped them in a trap, and I trapped their mom, got them all fixed, and we are keeping Tick-tock as pets. And we were able to get one of the other kittens from the same litter adopted by Kyle, who is in the series talking about plastering and permaculture. And we're going to talk about Kyle later, but that's where your sister went, right, Ticky? And Tick is kind of a Houdini. He keeps losing his color. I don't know how you do it. It's interesting, when they were kittens, really small kittens, when we caught them, maybe about 3-4 months old, and they were all white. And then their coloring starts to come in as they grow up. So we rescued them, and they're very nice pets for us. Okay, you ready for the next quiz? All right, let's see. Let's talk about the top 5 countries that listen to the podcast. So what are the top 5 countries that listen to the Seeking Sustainability Live podcast? If you can name 3 in the top 5. Okay, let's limit it to 2. If you can name 2 of the countries in the top 5, I will give you a little prize. Anybody? So what are the top 5 countries that listen to this talk show series in the podcast? All right, we'll have a little break. You can answer anytime. I'll just make a note so I don't forget that I asked you that question. Top 5 countries that download and listen to the episodes for the Seeking Sustainability Live talk show. Okay, first one to answer 2 or 3, if you can, of the top 5 countries, you can get a special prize. I will send it to you wherever you are in the world, so feel free to answer. All right, let's look at the next set of talks. So we were talking about the Simple Environmentalist. We just finished. Next, I had a chance to talk with an innkeeper, talking about running an inn, Kamakura by the sea, and that was lovely, talking with her. She and her husband decided to make an inn, like an Airbnb or a guest house, next to the seaside in Kamakura, so that they could have that beautiful area view. They're living there and also renting out some of the rooms. Of course, during coronavirus, they haven't had many guests, but she was also telling us about her favorite temples and shrines that she does walks to around the area, and what it's like to balance running a business, running a B&B type lodging business, and being a mother, and balancing work and free time. She had some great videos on her YouTube channel, which is linked on the video as well. And she introduces some of the culture and traditions, as well as some of the great cafes and shrines and temples in that area. She's also, she introduced getting your temple book with the calligraphy. So if you take those beautiful temple books in, and they can write the beautiful calligraphy for you and give the stamp. So that was nice talking with her. In 187, I was talking with Sheila. She's been studying and promoting kimono for over 30 years. And we talked about her research that she published, which was all about kimono fashion and kimono heritage throughout the ages in Japan. And some of the things I found really interesting from that talk, for example, talking about during the Edo Jidai, the Edo period, it became a rule that you were not allowed to have beautiful design on the outside of the kimono. You had to hide it. That was too showy. So it was kind of frowned upon to have beautiful designs or colors on the outside. So what created a new trend in kimono fashion, where all of the colors and all the beautiful design was then found on the inside of the kimono. So either on the inside panel or the inside back of the kimono or on the base of the kimono. That's where all the beautiful colors and design was found because of that rule. So they were still showing their fashion sense, but it was kind of hidden and kind of secret. which makes it more interesting, doesn't it? So that was a really nice takeaway from that talk with Kimono Sheila. I'm hoping we can have another talk because she knows so much about kimono, and she is combining her sense of fashion in Western clothes with kimono. And one of the really surprising things for me was she was saying she only does the laundry once a week, that because she only needs to wash her underwear inside the kimono, and you don't wash the kimono because it's made of silk or it's made of beautiful material. When you wear kimono, you just kind of think of it like wearing a coat. And so you would only need to wash your underthings, and you don't need to wash the kimono. So that was a big surprise, and how many generations kimono can be used and repurposed in different ways, re-dyed, fixed. So this is all perpetuating the traditional aesthetic of kimono, but the way that Kimono Sheila does it is a very unique, new way. So if you are interested in kimono, I would definitely recommend Kimono Sheila and that talk. And she also set up a very interesting event in London with one of the big museums there to show kimono fashion and the changing kimono fashion designers that she brought from Japan to that exhibition. So that was really fun. Next, talking with Michiaki Nishio about design. And Michiaki, your ideas were really interesting about, he's from Hiroshima. I'm in Hiroshima as well. And he had a very simple design for Hiroshima graphy idea. And it is the air view of Hiroshima's rivers and islands, and how Hiroshima originally was made of 5 islands and 6 rivers, and now all the land and rivers are kind of joined by bridges, and it's really beautiful, wonderful, simple design that he has created called Hiroshima graphy, from the top-down view of the rivers and the islands. So I love that idea. And he also introduced me to kind of an Easter egg. When you travel to Miyajima Island, one of my favorite places to go is Senkoji, which is the 1,000-mat pavilion. And when you go in there, it's a big open hall, all made of beautiful dark wood. It's very open on all sides, so you can see the ocean in front of Miyajima Island. You can see the ferries going across to the main island, bringing people to and from. And he also introduced me to, if you look really carefully, you can see like a gourd shape. A gourd shape? Like a gourd. Inside the wood is often repaired if it's damaged. There were many shapes like this. Oh, can you see? Oh, can you see it? Okay, no. Sorry, I don't know if you can see that. Like a hyotan in Japanese, or like a gourd. So there are many places in the Senkoji temple, not temple, but hall, 1,000-mat hall, where the wood has been damaged and repaired or replaced. But for some reason, this like hyotan shape is seen many times in that building. So that was really interesting after talking to him. And then I went back to Miyajima. And then that's something that now I can tell international visitors when I do guided tours as well, about the repair of the wood and putting in the gourd. Now we'll talk about a little bit later. Asby Brown introduced a lot of these ideas in the genius of Japanese carpentry in the talk with him at 183. He talked about how Japanese traditional temples were made with interlocking pieces. And one of the reasons for that is if a piece is damaged, it can be repaired, but also so the temple can be moved if it needs to be moved to a new location. And that was really interesting. I talked to Justin in Tohoku the other day, and he was saying there was a famous temple which was moved to a new location when they made a new building. And so immediately I thought of this talk with Asby, and I thought, I bet they took apart those pieces and then put it back together, those interlocking pieces, without nails. What a wonderful way to build a building so that it can be reused and used longer and taken care of. In this talk with Asby as well, there were so many beautiful parts of the talk. For example, if you are a carpenter, Japanese traditional carpenter, and you are choosing the wood for your temple, quite often the tree chosen to be big enough would have lived for 1,000 years. So then, before you cut it down, you have to choose very special trees. So you would go to the forest, you would make a prayer in front of the tree to promise that you will take care of the wood and use the wood for another 1,000 years. So these temples are built with the idea that they will last 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Amazing. So these carpenters are planning for temples well beyond their lifetime. They're planning for temples to be built, even the building might not happen within their lifetime. So that is true sustainability, because it's planning for the future, way far into the future. So that is how we should all be thinking. That's how all businesses should be planning, right? Way far into the future. I want to use this really important resource like wood or water, and I want to use it as efficiently and as well as I can, so that we can all, human beings, we can all enjoy using it for many, many years into the future. So that was a really beautiful part of that talk with Asby. Tina, you have a answer. Is it India and USA? If I win, I want my prize donated to somebody who could use it. Okay. All right, let's look at the top 5 countries listening for the podcast. Tina, you got it? Thank you for playing. So the top 5 countries, number 1 country, we are in Japan. So it's so nice that the number 1 listeners of the series are in Japan. Number 2 is India. Number 3 is Australia. Number 4 is United States, and number 5 is Canada. So thank you so much for playing, Tina. Yes, that is correct. Those are 2 of the top 5. Good job. Yay! I'll be in touch. You can donate it to somebody else if you like. I've met some people recently who know Tina. Now, Tina, we're going to talk about later, but since she's here, she runs a company in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, called Wheel Woman Cycling, and she brings groups of cyclists over to enjoy cycling the Shimanami Kaido. And Tina has been in the series a few times. Thank you so much, Tina, for sharing your insights and passion for cycling in Japan. So let's go back to the list a little bit. So we skipped over James Clark, who's a writer, a travel writer from the UK. And he's talking about wanting to come back to the Tohoku Michinoku Coastal Trail and walk along the trail and take his time and write a book while he's walking along the trail. And he had a collaboration with a filmmaker, and they were going to shoot a documentary film while also walking down along that beautiful coastal Michinoku Trail. So I really hope, James, you're able to come and do that walk soon in Tohoku area of Japan, northern Japan, especially this year as we commemorate and think about the disaster 10 years ago that happened in Tohoku with the tsunami and the nuclear disaster, and how resilient the local people have been in rebuilding their lives. We've had a few great talks from the Tohoku area talking about rebuilding rural communities in the disaster-stricken areas. And I hope to talk to more people because like many people in Hiroshima who had to rebuild lives and to commemorate losing loved ones in Hiroshima, they have had very similar experiences in the Tohoku area. So it's so wonderful to have those wonderful, enduring, resilient stories coming from the Tohoku areas. And James wants to capture those stories in a book and in a documentary film. So I hope you can do that, James. That sounds wonderful. Molly B, thank you so much for joining from Periscope. It's so nice to see the Periscope still working. Some people said they're having trouble watching on Periscope on Twitter, so thank you so much for joining. Congratulations on the 200th. I want to visit pottery shops and go and local potters. Yes, definitely. You may have seen the interviews that I did with Robert Yellen in Kyoto. That'll come up a bit later. And we had a follow-up, SSL follow-up video with Robert Yellen when I had a chance to go to Kyoto and go to his gallery, and he explained all the different pieces in his gallery. Of course, those pieces are always changing depending on what he has in stock. But Robert Yellen has such a deep understanding of not only the pieces and the art itself, but he also knows many of the potters. He's met them over the years, or he's visited their studios. So he's got so many great stories about the potters themselves and the passion for pottery. So yeah, I hope you can visit his studio someday. And yeah, thanks for joining and thanks for watching. Another talk that we just jumped over was talking about Aikido. In the series, we've had a few talks about martial arts. Not many, but talking about Aikido with Carolyn and Werner, who are originally from Germany, where they were doing Aikido and also teaching Aikido. And then they've been living and working in Japan for many years as teachers. And they run a dojo in the Hiroshima area where they teach not only international people, but also Japanese people how to do Aikido, because they have practiced and they have a very high dan and they're very good teachers. You've only been to Tokyo. Yeah, well, there's, even in Tokyo, there's lots of great places to explore. If I hear of any great pottery places, besides Robert Yellen's studio in Kyoto, I'll definitely let you know, Molly. Another talk, so talking about Aikido was really interesting, martial art. And when I went to watch their Aikido practice, it was really fun how a lot of the movements and a lot of the warming up looked like a dance practice. I was really surprised. So graceful and very little contact. But when they do contact, it's still very graceful and almost dance-like in the way that they practice. It's very interesting. I'd never seen Aikido before. Next one, 182, talking with Ayana Wise about networking, activism, and diversity through creativity in Japan. Ayana is doing so much in the Osaka, Kansai area. She's a photographer, she's a model, she's an activist. She helped organize Black Lives Matter demonstrations in Osaka last summer. And she's also a great collaborator. She introduced me to a few other people who've been in the series, like Rosie Galvan, who does the vegan bakery. Ayana also is a podcaster. She does Curly and Kansai podcasts, and they share what it's like to live in Japan from their perspective. And they offer a lot of great insights, not only for people of color, but also for people in the LGBTQ community, people who are vegan. They talk about a variety of topics. So it's so wonderful to have their perspective represented online in podcasting or on YouTube, as well as all of her great writing. She also started Black Creatives online, Black Creatives Japan, and they are collaborating and promoting each other to support everybody's work that they do and try to help get them more work that way. So she's got lots of great ideas, and look forward to hearing more in future from Ayana. If you follow any of these on the series, on the list in the playlist, you can see more links and more information for each one along the way. The next talk was with Chef Sage in Tokyo. He identifies as he, and he created a vegan cafe in the Tokyo area. And he had so many great ideas. For example, in the cafe, you can bring your own container and you can fill up on different vegan ingredients, which are kind of hard to get. For example, the soy meats or nuts or different kinds of grains, so that people can reduce on the packaging. And that was a great idea. He also had great ideas for changing to rice flour to make things gluten-free, and really making an welcoming and accepting space for people in the LGBTQ community who would feel comfortable coming there, asking him questions if they had any questions, and just making a safe space in Tokyo for people like him to create that kind of welcoming community in Tokyo. So I really admire the work that he's doing. Of course, very difficult during the coronavirus time to keep the doors open, but he's transitioned to remodeling his old place and getting it ready for when he can open and have customers again after the coronavirus lockdown. Next, I was talking with Ann Kilzer. She's a coder. We've had a few people talking about coding in the series, something that I really do not know much about, but I know enough to know it's important for our future. I encouraged my kids to take coding school when they were kids, and it's probably something I should learn as well, to be honest. There are so many things in the future of Japan which depend on people who can code, and there's not enough good coders in Japan for the businesses, and there's not many women who code. So it was so nice to talk to Anne and Yan Fang, who we'll talk about later, who are coders in the Tokyo area and providing great coding support and creating work-life balance situations as women coders in Japan. Anne is also very creative, and she's taking a variety of interesting classes to learn Japanese traditional arts. So I think was it called Nihonga, Japanese painting style, very beautiful Japanese painting style, and she was learning that online, so she introduced that to us a little bit. Thank you, Wheel Woman. We have a smiley face. All right, let's continue. Next, talking about 179, talking about empowering women. with Helen Iwata. So actually, just a few days ago, I was a guest on Helen's podcast. Molly, don't worry. Yeah, if you have to go anytime, guys, don't worry. I'm on a marathon talk, so if you pop in, pop out, no problem. Have a great day. Thanks, Molly. So talking about Helen Iwata, Helen has lived and worked in Japan for a long time. Now she runs her own business called Sasuga Communications. And Sasuga is a great word in Japanese. Oh, thank you, Molly. Thanks for your awesome broadcast. Thanks, Molly. I really appreciate your support. Thank you. So Helen was working in traditional Japanese companies and businesses, and she very honest about having kind of a breakdown and really feeling imbalanced in her situation and a lack of confidence. And she was supported by so many people around her that she was inspired to start her own coaching business. And so she started her own business called Sasuga Communications, and she is a life coach and business coach and presentation coach for a lot of Japanese women who are working in Japan, and to give them more confidence in their speaking style and ways to find better balance. And they have something called the Sasuga Cafe, where it's a private group and they all support each other and talk about not only their work situation, but they talk about different things in their normal life, like cooking recipes and stuff. So that was so wonderful to talk with her and hear her ideas. One of the things that we talked about, which seemed so relevant, and so of course, once she mentioned it, was about following your cycle, your menstrual cycle, and realizing that you're going to feel more focused at certain times of the month. You're going to feel more tired at certain times of the month. So it's good not to schedule your work at times when you're going to be more tired, and just to be aware of your cycle every month and kind of plan accordingly. And I thought that was so clever and so obvious, it seems, but not really something we talk about or think about too much. Next, talking about Asby again. Excuse me, I have to keep drinking water, talking so much. Asby Brown, he talked about small houses in an episode more recently, but this one was about sustainability and innovation in the Edo period in Japan. And for me, this was one of the most exciting talks because his book on Edo period Japan had so many wonderful examples of how during that time Japan was closed to the outside world, and there was actually so much innovation and so much sustainability in practice in people's lives, and so many really unique things that you don't often hear people talk about. Recently, I talked about Sheila and kimono culture, talking about how the kimono designs were put inside, right? That was also the same period. But what Asby is talking about in his book is every part, every resource had a special consideration to use it in a way that would use less energy, or where it could be reused or recycled. Really interesting. So for example, even human waste has value to farmers as a commodity. So during that time, you would have people coming to collect the human waste from the house and they would pay you for it and take it out to use in the farms. So I'm not sure how you feel about that, but it was part of the economic cycle, and every part of resources was used and reused in a very circular type economy. So many interesting examples from his book and from that talk on sustainability during the Edo period. Excuse me. The next talk, I had talked to Byron Nagy and his wife before about moving from Tokyo to the countryside and starting their life out in the rural area and starting a guest house and an organic farm. And I had also previously, talked to Jake Reiner, who is developing eco houses and more environmentally friendly second houses and rural area houses around the Mount Fuji area. And together they were both doing collaborative work with a group called Earth Embassy. And so they talked together about their ideas for the future of people moving out to the rural areas, redesigning old abandoned houses, and how they felt about the situation now during coronavirus and what they foresaw happening in the future in terms of rural development, community development. And of course, there's a lot of frustrations there. And it sounds like, like when people move from the city, maybe you have certain ideas and you want to implement them right away. But even though there's less people in rural areas, of course, they have their own way of doing everything. And one of the key takeaways from this talk was, if you are considering moving out to a rural area, maybe good idea to spend some time out there first. Get to know the local people. Maybe stay in a guest house, stay for a few days, walk around. So you really get a feel for the place and you really have a sense of what the local people kind of prioritize or what their philosophy of life is. And then if you do decide to buy a house and move out there, you would be a lot more familiar and accepting of the way things are done in that area. And I thought that was great advice. Definitely, there's a lot of great bargains for abandoned houses around Japan, akiya as they're called. And it's very tempting just to buy one up, even if you haven't seen it, because the price is amazing and the pictures look good, right? But it's definitely worth taking the time and going out to the area, not only walking around the property itself, but walking around the local area, going to local shops and restaurants, and really thinking about how you would fit in there and how you would feel living there full time. So I thought that was some great advice from that talk. The next one, talk with Hiko Simon. So 175. Hiko Simon is kind of a Japanese news guru. Every Sunday night for many years, like 10 years, he's done a news show where he recaps latest Japanese news stories and gives his advice, and he's been doing that for a long time. And it's his music that I use, thanks to his offering it royalty free on my broadcast. So on the background music as the intro or outro, or for the podcast background music, that's all from Hiko Simon via SoundCloud. So he's a very talented guy. He also has a full-time job. This music and his news shows every week. There's extra. Thank you so much, Hiko Simon, for letting us use your great music and for joining my show in a collaborative effort. We've done this a few times. I think we've done it 5 times. And we talk about the latest news in Japan and how it connects to sustainability. We haven't done it in February, but hopefully this month in March we can do another episode, because there's a lot of great news stories about environmental innovation, technology, for example, or latest trends news, government policy in terms of coronavirus, social sustainability. So lots of great topics worth discussing. The next topic was with Alfie. Alfie Goodrich is a talented photographer. Now, Alfie was in one of the first episodes with two other photographers and videographers talking about his philosophy for photography. And this time was great to follow up with Alfie. And he was telling us how he gives photography lesson walking tours to people as you walk around. And one of the interesting takeaways from this talk for me was how he often, on a walking tour, photo walking tour, he would sometimes see some local people and they would be really surprised. Like, why are you taking a photo of that? And he was talking to one of the local people who asked him, why are you taking a photo of that? I see that every day. And then he explained to her about how the light was positioned in a really beautiful way, or there was a really interesting angle, or it was an old building or old traditional style, and it was interesting to look at in that way through the camera. He let her look through his lens. And then he said he was really happy when he saw her walking away and she was looking up where he had been talking about. And so she was taking it in, new, even though she sees that view every day. So being able to introduce her normal neighborhood view in a new way is such a fun thing about being a photographer. He's a very talented photographer, and he does many professional photo projects. So it's so wonderful to also hear about his walking tours and photography lessons that he does. He's got so many great ideas to pass on to other people interested in photography. So thank you so much, Alfie. The next talk, this was the first talk that I had with Asby Brown. We have another talk with Asby Brown next week on another book. I think that's next Monday. But this was the first talk, and Asby's talking about his work as a researcher with Safecast. So Safecast, they actually have an event next week, Saturday on the 13th. They started when the Tohoku disaster happened to help people get, is it called dosimeters, and to register radiation around different areas of Japan. Because one of the things that a lot of international residents in Japan, there was just a lack of information. And then there was some information from the government, but people were skeptical whether they could believe it or not. So the whole concept of Safecast started to give people access to dosimeters so they could start submitting data from around Japan. And collectively, this data was open source so that everybody could access it and people could start to make their own choices based on actual data and actual information. And now Safecast still doing the radiation scanning around Japan with volunteers, but also it's gone on to other kinds of data collection, open source. So for example, coronavirus cases, pollution, there's different kinds of data points that they are starting to collect from around Japan. So yeah, really interesting talk about Safecast and the philosophy of citizen science and public open source data collection. So that was really interesting. Asby is talking about different books in different episodes, but here he's talking about his work with Safecast, and he's the lead researcher for Safecast now. In the other talk, number 173, talking with Thomas Kleffer. of Pitchfork Farms. It's in Hiroshima, the Onomichi area. Opposite Onomichi, the little island in front of Onomichi is called Mukaishima. Mukai means over there, and Shima means island. So over there island from Onomichi. It's a really nice little island. We did a cycle tour around not long ago with another guest in the series, Rika, who we'll talk about a bit later. And Thomas has been doing an organic farm, no-till farming on Mukaishima. And I did a extra little video is on my channel recently, an extra 5 minutes. He's talking about propagating seeds during the winter. So organic farming and farming in general is such an important thing for sustainability, having local food. The number of farmers in Japan is decreasing. We have other farmers in the series that we'll talk about. Chuck Kaiser in the Shiga, Kyoto area. Thomas in Hiroshima area. Nagano Naturally, Heather Fukase, and other farmers in the series. Hive and Barrow in the Chiba area. So it's always interesting to talk to farmers in Japan who are doing us a great service and helping us live more sustainable, healthy lives by growing vegetables, but also the people in this series who have talked as guests, they're trying to do it in an organic way, not using chemicals, not using pesticides. So it's always interesting talking to them. It's not an easy job by far. It's very hard, but it's very rewarding. And Thomas is so interesting. He's so curious and always looking for better solutions on his farm. He's also balancing raising animals and using animals on the farm, as well as raising vegetables and growing fruit trees and different things that grow well in his area. So using innovation, learning from others, listening to podcasts, applying those ideas, and seeing if it works on his farm. In terms of animals, he's got sheep and goats, dogs as pets, and chickens. And I think he had ducks, I'm not sure, but definitely chickens, goats, and sheep. And when I visited his farm the first time, he was lending his goats out to other areas to eat the weeds as well. So that was really nice to see. The goats are very efficient at eating weeds, especially tough weeds in an area. So if you need to clear an area, maybe you can hire Thomas's goats. You can get in touch with Pitchfork Farms. Pitchfork because no-till, so not tilling the soil and just trying to grow it without digging up all the soil. It's a really interesting style of farming. Next, we were talking with Tyler Lynch, talking about hospitality in Nagano. Tyler and his wife run a ryokan in Nagano. Renee, thank you for joining from YouTube. Congratulations. Very well done. Thank you, Renee. Thanks for joining. Appreciate your support. So talking about Tyler Lynch in Nagano, he's in a really small town in Nagano and not far from snow monkeys. So he's also active in creating local walking tours of the town. And during coronavirus, they had less guests. So he was collaborating with other innkeepers and other restaurants, and they were doing a takeout delivery food service. We did a workshop with Tyler and his chef. So they were teaching us how to make vegan kaiseki ryori, traditional Japanese food, which is not usually vegan, but because Tyler's Inn often gets international guests, that is one thing they often offer, is a vegan version of the beautiful traditional many dishes set meal. So that was wonderful to have as a workshop on Seeking Sustainability Live workshop, which is a new project for 2021 that I've started this year, and Tyler joined. We did a collaborative workshop at the end of February, beginning of February. Thanks, Renee. My pleasure. Yeah, so it was great talking to Tyler about hospitality for international visitors. Of course, the struggles during coronavirus time has been very difficult. They've had a lot less guests, but actually Japan's go-to travel campaign was really good for his ryokan, and they had a lot more customers during that campaign. For people that didn't know about Go-To campaign, it was an encouragement from the government to pay for some of the cost of staying at a hotel or eating out at a restaurant, and then more people would go and take advantage of that because it was cheaper. And then at the end of the year, I believe, the government pays back that amount to the restaurant or the hotel business. So it was interesting to hear from Tyler that that was a good initiative for them. There was a lot of skepticism whether that was a good campaign to do or not during coronavirus time. Definitely when you're having a lot of spikes in cases in the big cities, and then you're encouraging people from the cities to go travel to the countryside, may not be the best idea. We haven't had as many cases in Japan as other countries, and thankfully not as many deaths or serious cases, so let's hope that continues. But there was some controversy whether the Go-To travel campaign was worthwhile for the customer and the local businesses. But it was interesting to hear Tyler's perspective on that. I was also interested to hear they're retrofitting some of the rooms. So in the traditional inn, the ryokan, he has built by himself a beautiful outdoor bath, dotenburo, and it looks great. But also they were thinking of installing showers in the rooms, maybe as an added measure because of coronavirus. It's not a good idea to share the bath areas or share common areas. So thinking about in the future of travel, maybe having individual showers in the rooms would be better going forward. I'm sure it's a big cost. So there's probably a lot of debate going on how to set up your hotel or inn for the best, most sustainable tourism in the future. It's a lot that goes on back and forth, I'm sure, from owners. Next, we were talking with Yan Fan. So we mentioned earlier talking to Ann Kilzer, who's a female coder. Yan Fan is also a female coder who runs a business in the Silicon Valley style that they do. Code Chrysalis is the name of the business in Tokyo. And they do coding training for people to get them learning the basics and up to a certain level where they're able to enhance their existing career or to get a new career in the tech industry, IT and tech industry, which is so necessary and so in high demand in Japan. So it's wonderful to have these two women who are so active in the coding education and coding development part of industry in Japan. One thing I forgot to mention with Ann Kilzer and Yan Fan is they both co-founded organization called Speak Her. So SPEAKHER. And Speak Her is kind of an online database where women, and I've registered as well, women can register your information as an expert in some area. And if an organization is preparing an event or a conference and they have speakers for the conference or they have a panel, It's to offer options of female speakers or female panelists instead of just a manel or an all men panel, which you often see in Japan. So it's a great like soft power initiative speaker in order to make options so that people doing conferences or events can choose from a variety of women around the country who have a variety of expertise and create a more diverse panel representative of more gender equality, a variety of inputs, and not only have the experiences of men as leaders, which is always a challenge in Japan, I'm sure, like many countries. But it's particularly been in the news lately with Mori's horrible comments about women talking too much and a few comments happening in government. So it's wonderful to have people like Jan or Anne who are trying to create a balance in terms of gender equality, in terms of speakers at different conferences or events. Next, we're talking with Todd Van Horn about umeshu. He's in Wakayama, and that area is really famous for the ume trees and the ume industry. Now, ume is often translated as plum, but actually it's closer to apricot. So often abroad you'll see ume boshi, which is often pickled plum used in rice, and umeshu is also something you can make with the ume fruit. You can put it with spirits and make kind of a sweet, sour alcohol. So this is quite famous from the area he's in. So we were talking a little bit about the umeboshi and the umeshu industry. And he had some interesting stories. So the ume tree, and I have a ume tree in my garden. So we were talking about some of the stories of things that I see. I just saw all the beautiful ume blossoms in the tree outside. Beautiful white and pink flowers. And it's the first blossom we see after the winter. So it always cheers you up. And so it must be really beautiful in the Wakayama area where he is right now with all the blossoms. But he was saying there's some innovation in the ume industry where they can reduce the amount of labor because a lot of the local people are quite old. So they can set up the nets under the trees in kind of along the hills so that the nets would combine and roll all the fruit down to a collection area so they wouldn't have to pick it all by hand. And I thought that was really interesting and innovative. We've got 7 more minutes until the next quiz. Let's see. Top 10. Ooh, we can talk about the top 10 videos. If you can name 2 videos, 2 of the guest talks from the top 10, then you can get a prize. Is it only Tina who's playing today? If anybody else wants to play. I told you about my cats. We could also ask about the cats. I don't know if anybody would know. So we rescued these cats. 2 of them were born, 3 of them actually were born on the deck. And we got one of them adopted by a friend. And last year, we also had 2 cats, 3 cats, kitties that were born on the deck. We got one adopted. And one of the people that adopted the cat last year, Dave in Osaka, is a guest in the series. He's a really popular live streamer from Osaka, Kansai area. And one of the guests from the series, Kyle Holzhuger, in Okayama, he adopted our cat from this year. So it's such a nice connection with the cats. So I'll tell you the cats' names now. And if you're watching later, you could win this quiz. So the cats' names, the twin cats, the Siamese cats, are TikTok. And the black cats are Lonnie and Garrett. So that's the kitties' names. The ages, Lonnie and Garrett are 3, and TikTok are 2. No, 1. I'll say 1. And they were all born on our deck. Cat's mama's names. Oh, this is difficult. Why did I make it so difficult? TikTok's mom's name is Chris. And Lonnie and Garrett's name, mom's name is Kiki. Okay. Wow. Nobody's going to get that. All right. Good luck. I'll ask you that later. Earlier, we were talking about gender balance. So on the listener side and the speaker side, Garrett is an interesting name. Our daughter named Garrett and Lonnie, and I named TikTok, so it's funny. Thank you, Ayaka. Ayaka gave a super chat. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Joy-san. I'm really looking forward to seeing you spreading your great community to the world in the future. Thank you so much. Means a lot. Thank you, Ayaka from YouTube. Yeah, so guests in the series have also adopted our rescue kittens. That's a nice connection you may not have known about. All right, before we get to the next section, I will leave you just for 1 second. I'm going to grab some more water. Hold on. I'm back. A few people ask about the partition behind me. So this is a noren, a Japanese noren, usually hanging between rooms, and I use it as my backdrop. So it's real. It's not a digital backdrop. I have to eat a mikan because my voice is going. Thank you for your patience. All right, next. So start at the top. Oh, we have Matt and Hiroko. I need an assistant. Yes. The cats. Cats are rubbish assistants. They're just sleeping. They're nice and quiet, though. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, if I had an assistant talking when I ate my mikan. So apologies while I eat my mikan and talk. Matt and Hiroko. Matt and Hiroko have been in the series, I want to say 5 times. I'm not sure why. We will find out as we're going to talk about all their talks. This one, Real Life Ninja Stories, was so fun. Actually, Matt and Hiroko would be great assistants because they have such a deep knowledge of all of these subjects, and they've written these great books in the Attack series. One is on ninjas, One is on Yurei ghosts. I can't remember, but we're going to get to them later. So for each book that they wrote, they have so much information that didn't get into the book. So they've got so many great stories to tell the whole time. So fun. Okay, kokechi. I love kokechi. Nice. Yeah, you can use the emoji, I hope, for the kokechi doll. I love kokechi too. So in Matt and Hiroko's talk, talking about the ninja tales, one of the most surprising insights was that the haiku poet Basho may have been a ninja. That a ninja is not really the image that we have in modern times of the person all in black, but a ninja is someone who didn't stand out. And originally, if you ever watch like a play and in Japan, and the people doing the puppets are all in black, and so that kind of idea of someone not seen is kind of where the idea for the ninja costume came from. And I would love to know why you chose those stamps. Okay. So for the kokeshi, I thought it's so cute, right? So if somebody says something cute, you can put the kokeshi emoji, right? And then if you're wishing for something, you can have the daruma, or you're feeling lucky is the daruma doll. And then if you feel like you want to say fight or good luck, you could do the ninja kick. And then if you're feeling fresh and spring-like, then the sakura. So that's why I chose those. And dango, the wagashi, because I love wagashi. I love dango. I could eat that all the time. So if something's delicious or talking about food, you could do the dango, the wagashi one. Okay, so that's Matt and Hiroko talking about the wonderful ninja. How can I get hold of those stamps? So if you become a member on YouTube, then you're able to use the emojis that I made and use them as you make comments and as you're chatting live or comments below. So I'm able to use them now, which is kind of fun. Thanks for asking. There are also badges. So if you're a member for a month, you get a badge, one of the emojis. And then 2 months is a different badge like that. What's your favorite wagashi shop in Hiroshima? Oh, good question. Wagashi shop. I'm blanking, right? Oh, no. Yes. In my neighborhood, there was a really old one that started just after the war, or maybe 100 years history, but they closed. So I have to look for a new one. Ayaka, if you have a good recommendation for wagashi shop, let me know. I love wagashi. I really enjoyed going to Kyoto, which brings me to my next talk. When I visited Kyoto, I visited Mike Barr, who talked about renovating the old Kyoto tea house that he bought and renovating it into a guest house. And Mike taught me so much about the size of the front of the shop is how they made the cost of the building. So a lot of the Kyoto tea houses, a very narrow front, but very long all the way through. And I had the chance to visit him in Kyoto and see his Kyoto tea house. So that's this follow-up video right here. Mike was also in the series introducing the renovation in an earlier episode. Next, talking with Justin Conley about sustainable ethical branding and nonprofit work. He works with Image Mill. We had a talk with my gosh, I'm blanking, but another Graham. I want to say Graham. Oh my gosh, I've never talked so long on the live. Sorry, guys. Richard Graham of Image Mill. So Justin and Richard work together at Image Mill. So talking about how can you do a branding company? How can you do marketing in a sustainable way? And Image Mill is such a stylish company, but also very ethically focused. So really interesting talk with Justin there. Next, Kyoto Camilla tea ceremony. So we've had a few talks with people in Kyoto, like I mentioned before. Robert Yellen, Pottery Studio, Mike Barr, who renovated the tea house, and here talking to Atsuko Mori about her love for kimono and her love for tea ceremony. So she, sorry, so she found an old traditional tea house and she renovated it, and she's running Camilla tea ceremony business in Kyoto. And during the coronavirus time, they had so few customers. She started making masks, beautiful Japanese style masks and other handmade products, and selling them from their Camilla tea ceremony shop. I'd love to go and visit someday. The tea house where they have their tea ceremonies is so beautiful and looks out on a beautiful garden. That's something I learned from the ASB talks about traditional Japanese buildings built in thinking about the sun and the shade and the view of a traditional house. So now when I visit a tea house or a traditional building, I'm always thinking about that. Like, where is the shading? Where is the engawa, the outside hallway area? And how does it work in terms of providing a view to the inside, but also providing natural light? So the tea houses that they use at Camilla Tea House are very beautiful from the pictures, and all of their staff wear beautiful kimono when they do the tea ceremony, and looks like a fantastic experience. I'd highly recommend it next time you visit Kyoto. Next, talking to Carolyn Pover. Carolyn wrote a really interesting book, 1 Month in Tohoku, about her experiences right after the tsunami. She was actually in Guam during the tsunami and talking about experiencing the disaster from outside Japan, when she had lived in Japan and had so many friends in Japan and felt so connected to Japan, but being outside Japan when the disaster happened, and how she kind of digested that information and how it really spurred her to action. So then she collected donations in the UK and money, and then she came back to Japan, and she went by herself with a truckload of supplies and money and met local people, distributed all the supplies and money to people who needed it. And she's talking in the series, she was talking to me about mindfulness and how she had a great story. While she was driving the truck up, she got lost and she ended up on a side street. She wasn't sure where the building was that she was supposed to go and drop off the supplies. And so she asked a local lady, do you know where such and such building is? And the lady's like, oh, yeah, go over there, and gave her directions. And then she realized, wait, I should ask her if she needs anything. And so she asked the lady, do you need anything? And the initial reaction is, no, it's okay. But then she said, no, do you need anything? What do you need? I got lots of stuff. And the lady's like, what do you have? So she ended up giving some supplies to that lady and then the lady's neighbors. So it was kind of a lesson in being present where you are, not only about delivering supplies to Tohoku, but in daily life as well. So really thinking about what you're doing, where you are, and who's around you. So no matter if you're trying to help people or if you're just going through your daily life, it's always a good reminder. So I love that story from the talk with Carolyn. I'm sure she's really busy now talking about the Tohoku recovery efforts after 10 years. And she had a really close relationship with a local fishing village where she stayed for a month trying to help the recovery efforts, but helping in many different ways. So there's so many great stories from that book. I would highly recommend it. Next was another talk with Hiko Simon, talking about sustainability and Japanese news. And then the next talk was with Bern Schellenhorn in Kyoto, another Kyoto guest. Now, Bernd is originally from Germany, and his partner is a Japanese woman who was also in this series talking about photography and her style of philosophy of photography called Miksang, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But they're such good collaborators working together in how he makes this beautiful shojin yori. And it takes such a long time, but she's able to capture the beauty of the, not only the food and the plating, but the beauty of the surroundings and the experience. So together they're able to create a real beautiful atmosphere. Now, interesting to talk to him about shojin yori and how long it takes to make shojin yori, like often days, because the process of how the food is made is often as important as the recipe. So you're not supposed to use traditional modern methods. You're supposed to use traditional methods. Everything should be organic and locally sourced, and of course in season. So I'd really love to learn more. I'm hoping we can do a workshop series with Burns sometime this year. I had talked to him about creating a workshop, but he said it's impossible to teach anything in only 2 hours. So the normal workshop style that we've been doing is on a Sunday once a month for a 2-hour cooking lesson. And we've done it a few times successfully, but he was saying you just can't do that with shojin yori, not if you're teaching the traditional philosophy. So wouldn't it be wonderful, I was thinking, to have a series of lessons with Bernd where he teaches us the philosophy of shojin yori. So if you're interested in that, the traditional Buddhist style cuisine famous from Kyoto, if you're interested in that kind of workshop, please get in touch with me or Bernd, and we'll try to set that up. Thank you, Tina. Next, talking to Stasia Matsumoto. She runs a business called In Kimono in the Tokyo area. I think it's Akasaka, which is a really traditional area. It's central Tokyo, but it has like a old classic kind of old Japan kind of feel to it. And she has a little shop there. She has a lot of vintage kimono, and she is very good as a kimono stylist. So she can often repair kimono or use some kimono which some part is damaged. She can use the good material and repurpose it to make different combinations for people. She also had a customer who didn't fit in most kimonos, so she custom made a larger size kimono for her. Really interesting businesswoman doing really interesting things in terms of kimono styling in her shop. And she's also a photographer and stylist. So she will not only dress you in kimono, but she'll take you out, find the best locations to take your picture, and do like a set kimono wearing and photography set. She also, of course, during coronavirus had less business, but I hope she's able to continue. We need more businesses like that where people can experience kind of the traditional Japan. Wearing kimono is so beautiful, and experience the beauty of a traditional part of Japanese culture. There's a question from Mendel on Facebook. I think I had a question from Mendel earlier. Is there a new one? I don't see it. Is it the Wow 200 one? I have that from earlier. He said what are the 10 most sustainable tips? Yeah, I already answered that. I can't remember what they are. Now my mind is going. So I'm glad that I already answered that earlier. Sorry, guys. Oh my gosh. 2 hours, 15 minutes. Okay. Next, we have a regular of the series, Paprika Girl, Okanda Riki. Okanda Riki goes by the screen name, Paprika Girl, and she has joined the series a few times, always popular episodes where she talks about her love of wearing kimono and using traditional Japanese culture in her daily life. She's one of the women in the series, like Stasia, like Sheila, Kimono Sheila, who wears kimono quite regularly in her daily life. And when I talked to Hiroko, Yoda, Matt and Hiroko, Hiroko and Paprika often wear kimono together. So it's interesting to hear about different connections between guests in the series sometimes. Paprika Girl always has great advice about how to reuse kimono, or she told me about taking certain towels or materials to a kimono shop and getting it dyed to a color that she likes better than the color it is. So using traditional shops like kimono shops and supporting them in different ways, not just buying kimono, but using them to get things dyed or get things repaired. Paprika Girl has many beautiful kimono which her husband's mother passed on to her, and she has either had repaired or changed the size and reutilized, and she looks so beautiful in kimono. She has an interesting job. She works in Japanese movie industry, so she has some great stories from the movie industry. She is also a novelist. She has published some recent short stories, novellas, which are really interesting and also give a nice insight into Japanese culture using her stories that she thinks of while she's on location with her job in the Japanese film industry. So that was interesting. Now, Cycle Shikoku, I think I have to thank Tina for the introduction. Norman White, he offers cycle tours around Shikoku and the Shimanami area. So Shikoku is the island next to Hiroshima area. So Hiroshima area is often the start of the Shimanami Kaido, the cycling tours. So people start in Onomichi and end on Shikoku Island in Ehime, Matsuyama. So Norman often does tours from either side, one side to the other. He's got lots of great advice about how long to take, where to stay, where to eat. So it was great hearing his advice and his passion for sharing cycling tours with visitors to Japan. All right. We ready for the next? Have I skipped one? Oh, no, that was it. Okay. So next, sake! Finally. One of the popular sub-themes of the series has been sake, which maybe I should start drinking to make it roll off the tongue a bit better. Is it afternoon? Yeah. This is not sake, by the way. This is water. So talking with Justin Potts. Justin is kind of an expert in sake and rural destination branding. He works a lot in tourism and travel and helping local businesses in the Chiba area, I believe, get online content and give them advice how they could improve their business for international visitors and travelers, and also working with local sake industry. So he had a lot of great stories to tell. It was interesting talking to Justin. He often collaborates with Sake Mistress, which is later on in the list there, Simone Maynard. Now, Simone has introduced me to a few people in the sake industry in Japan. Simone is in Australia, but is doing so much to support sake brewers in Japan through her Taste with the Toji series. And I know Justin has been a part of that and helping with translate for some of the sake brewers, so they make their Taste with the Toji series interviews bilingual. Yeah, thank you, Mendel, for your questions earlier. I did answer it earlier. Next, talking with Matt and Hiroko again, talking this time about the yokai. Oh, that was one of the ones I forgot to mention. So what is yokai? Now, how does yokai and yude be different? So yude is another book that they wrote about and we talked about on Halloween, so we haven't talked about yet. Yude is ghosts and yokai is kind of character more closely connected to folk tales. So they have so many interesting stories from traveling around Japan and collecting stories of yokai from different areas as they did their research for the book. Really interesting. Yokai is often, I hope I'm getting this right, but yokai is often used in gaming and other characters. For example, the Pokemon are closely connected to yokai. Mascots for different areas of Japan are connected to yokai. A lot of folk tales and yokai. So yes, very interesting talk. You have to check that out. Next, talking with Akiko Suzuki about teaching Japanese. And she is actually she was working in the gaming industry, teaching Japanese to people working in the gaming industry who wanted to know gaming Japanese. Now, this is a big part of Japanese culture and Japanese business culture that I didn't really know about. So it was really interesting hearing from her. She does online classes. It was interesting hearing about her techniques for teaching Japanese at different levels in private classes and group classes. And she is also a podcaster. So she does these great podcasts on her show where she interviews other people in Japanese. They only speak Japanese, but it's very easy to follow, even if you're an intermediate or level. And then it's a good way to practice your listening. And she offers the transcript if you support her on Patreon, I believe. So it doesn't cost much, and you can get some nice practice even by just following her podcast. I would recommend that. She's a really nice lady. The next, we talked a little bit about before, Tim Bunting, and talking about the Yamabushi, the mountain monks in the Tohoku area in the mountains. And he's originally from New Zealand, so he calls himself the Kiwi Yamabushi. And the next talk, Yukari and Kimika Sweeney were actually introduced by Tina, I believe. And they have a house in Onamichi, but they've been living and working in the London, England area for a while, and they are designers. They run a business called YSD London, and I love their simple textile design. And it was interesting hearing about how they run the mother-daughter business and how they do their business and life balance. And it was nice hearing how a mother and daughter work together using Japanese aesthetic, Japanese design, but in a different country, and which kinds of products are very popular with their customers there. I think they were talking about you have to have a balance of there's some Japanese design, but there's also some local design. And that kind of combination of different styles seems to work really well, not only for their customers in London, but also in Japan. Even though they're in London, they were collaborating with a lot of small art crafts businesses in Japan. So, for example, to design their bento boxes, they had almost like silk screeners doing the design by hand in Japan and then sending it to their shop in London. So even though they're outside Japan, they're still very supportive of the artisan crafts industry in Japan. So it was really interesting to hear about that perspective. Next, talking with Bobby Kotu of Q2 Japan. Bobby has a very successful YouTube channel called Q2. He's a great videographer and photographer, and he has a lot of interesting kind of documentary style movies, short movies, videos of things that he's passionate about. So he introduced Clementine from Mikan Bags, who is also in this series. And he interviewed people in Okinawa when he went there just on vacation. But once he started talking to local people and collecting their stories, he was so interested in the backstory and a lot of the inequality during the war and issues of social justice. So he started doing the documentary, even though he wasn't quite prepared for it. So there were some great stories there. Next, Mitsue Nagase is the partner of Burned Shellhorned. We talked about earlier, and they work together to show the beautiful shojin-ryori that he makes in Kyoto, the vegan Buddhist cuisine from Kyoto. And her photography helps to enhance the shojin-ryori, but also she was explaining about the Miksang photography style. So it was the first time that I'd heard of it, but basically being mindful while taking photos. And I think this is, in our modern world, this is something we don't do enough, right? Like, we just take loads of photos of our food, or take photos of our cats, or take photos very quickly, but not really thinking of it. And there's a certain philosophy to, like, meditation plus photography, Miksang. So that was a really interesting photography philosophy to learn about. Next, talking with Melody Cook. Now, I heard a comment about this one. Hold on. Now, Melody Cook was introducing about adopting and foster care in Japan. And I heard some people were wondering how this connects to sustainability. But sustainability is about improving quality of life of people, improving the environment, and making a profit, right? Trying to balance people, planet, profit is sustainable. That's going to be some way we can move into the future, right? If we think about all those three. So in terms of social equity and taking care of the kids, definitely part of sustainability. So it was so wonderful talking to Melody Cook, who has adopted and done foster care herself in Japan and written many articles about it. And she has lots of great advice for people about how to understand the foster care adoption system in Japan better. And she also wrote a section of a book with another writer that we talk about later. They wrote the book together, and she talks about foster care in that book as well. And I know of people who have really appreciated her advice. And it's a bit difficult for international residents to understand how adoption and foster care works, even though they really want to help children in need. So definitely something that we want to talk about and share the information. So more people who are looking to help children and be there for children who need attention and need support can do that and reach out and help orphans or people, children in care in their area. So I thought that was really interesting and important talk. Thank you, Melody. Next, we talked about Simone Maynard and her series earlier. And then back to Kyoto with Peter McIntosh. And Peter was talking about making connections with people in the geisha industry in Kyoto over many years, and working as a guide to provide tours and meals and experiences where visitors could meet local geisha and have a drink with them and ask them questions and watch them perform. So as a foreigner living in Kyoto for a long time, interested in this culture, he was talking about how he got introduced to geisha culture originally and all the investment that he has made over many years to be trusted by the community. And he shared some of the interesting insights about the geisha culture, which I hadn't heard as well. So yeah, really interesting. 2:33, almost did 100. How many more? Oh my gosh, so much talking. Are you guys doing okay? Any questions as I'm going? Please write them. Questions or comments, please, anytime. Okay. Next was another talk with Hiko Simon. Thanks always, Hiko Simon. Thanks for joining and collaborating. And then Derek Yamashita. So we talked about a bit earlier. He's helping locals prepare for the future of tourism and more sustainable travel ideas. Next, Bobby Judo, talking with Bobby and Ali, who run the Japan by River Cruise podcast, and I had a chance to talk to them separately. We have very exciting news for April. We're going to try humor, resilience, and creating political commentary for your podcast in a workshop in April. So mark your calendars if you're interested in doing a comedy workshop with Bobby and Ali. That'll be April 10th and 11th. So 10th, 10th for 2 hours during the workshop. And then you'll be able to practice your material. And on the 11th, we get together again for an hour for everybody to perform. So it should be really fun. Bobby and Ollie have had a lot of years doing stand-up and doing comedy in Japan. And Bobby has a very successful YouTube channel. He's often on media and television. They're two very funny guys. And I enjoyed being on their podcast. When was that? Last summer? And we were talking about sustainable tourism and my thoughts on the Tokyo Olympics, my thoughts on cruises. Yeah, they're very, very quick and very fun. Thank you, Tina. I'm off on dog walking duties, but I'd love to come back later. Gosh, maybe I can scoop the prize pool. Thanks, Tina. Thanks for joining. And Tina, thank you so much for your connections with so many people and your support of so many of the talks over the year. Thank you so much. I'm hoping I can meet up with Tina sometime in Onomichi. We can cycle together. That'll be wonderful. Before Bobby, we were talking about abandoned houses, talking about Akiya and Inaka. So this is a kind of a new initiative to help people find abandoned houses out in the rural areas that they can rent and buy, and using like good information services and taking video and being that bridge in between international customers and the local sellers and real estate agents. So that's a great initiative. Next, talking with Chika Iwami, also a contact from Tina in Australia. She's there in Melbourne as well, Japanese lady who has lived in Melbourne for a long time. And she does Japanese cooking classes in Australia, using her grandmother's recipes from Japan and using ingredients which you can find in Australia. So that was really interesting to hear about how she's sharing her passion for Japanese food, but using local Australian ingredients. And I thought that was really a great way to introduce Japanese culture, but also more sustainable because you're sourcing most of your vegetables and seasonal ingredients from the local area. So I love that talk. Thank you, Chika. Next was a follow-up with Chuck at Midori Farm, Chuck Kaiser. He has an organic farm in Shiga, and I actually had a chance to visit his farm. He was in the series earlier talking about growing vegetables, the ups and downs of selling during coronavirus. And then when I visited him, I had a chance to help him plant some green onions, some negi, and he lent me some overalls so I wouldn't get dirty. And it was a beautiful area in Shiga next to the forest and the river. And he explained about making an electric fence because the monkeys would eat a lot of the vegetables if he didn't have the electric fence. And yeah, really interesting and really hard work, man. My respect for anybody who's doing farming. Growing your own food is not easy. Keep up the good work. Next, talking with my dad in Hawaii about his work in Japan. He lived in Kyushu for over 10 years teaching kids. And then he moved back to Hawaii, where he started up a charity which supported kids in need by matching adults from the local areas around the schools with kids in the school who needed attention, a bit of help with their homework. It's a beautiful organization called Common Grace. So it was wonderful to talk with him about that. And I think this is definitely a kind of philosophy for supporting kids who need a bit more attention or a bit more support. Definitely something we could try in Japan as well. There's a lot of kids that fall between the gaps in Japan or any country for that matter. So it was really interesting talking with him. And then talking with Byron and Kaori Nagy. Before that, I mentioned them earlier. They moved from their busy business people lifestyles in central Tokyo after, I believe, the Tohoku disaster was their impetus to move out to the rural area and have more food secure feeling by growing their own, being in a natural area, and raising a family. So it was an interesting story about transition from the urban life to the country life, and different perceptions, right? Like at first when they changed from the city life to the country life, they were thinking they're gonna miss city life so much and want to come back all the time. And then after about 6 months, they rarely went back to the city. So their perception of what's important in life was completely changed once they transitioned to the rural area. And they have a beautiful guest house, which they've been working on during coronavirus to make an outdoor bath and renovate a bit more, and working on a second house. So there was a lot of remodel talk in that talk as well. And Kaori, she's very good at marketing and branding their vegetables with great pictures and descriptions on Instagram. So there was a bit of talk about sustainable branding and sustainable marketing as well. Athenos, thank you so much for joining. Have you ever considered doing an episode on the road somewhere in Japan? Would be great to see an otherwise little known location being highlighted. Yes, great idea. Now on YouTube, I have passed 1,000 subscribers and passed 4,000 watch hours. So now it is possible to take the show on the road, so to speak. And I'm looking forward to doing some on location work. I just passed that level, so I'm just recently allowed to do that. I tried a walking tour of Hiroshima Station last weekend to try it, but unfortunately when I was editing it, I deleted it by accident. Oh no. But for anybody who was on live, got to see it, I think maybe about 15 of you. Sorry about that. But this coming weekend, we were supposed to have a workshop, but it got canceled. So this coming Sunday, 9 a.m., I'm going to try to take you to my favorite temple, Mitaki Temple. And I'm also this weekend going to be in Onomichi on Saturday. So I might have a few on-the-go lives for you coming up this weekend. Very exciting. Thank you for your question. Next, talking with Jess Hallam. So I mentioned earlier, Jess is working for a company in Tohoku, and her concept is to create a brand, an appealing brand for the whole Tohoku area as a great destination to spend time in. And she and her company is collaborating with a lot of local businesses and local sustainable fishing ideas. There's a lot of exciting ideas in terms of sustainable travel in Tohoku area, talking with Jess there. And then talking with Jacob Reiner. I mentioned earlier, Jacob and Byron had done a collaborative project together at Earth Embassy, and Jacob has some beautiful properties out in the Mount Fuji view. You can see beautiful views of Mount Fuji from that area, and it's really gorgeous. more sustainable houses that he's helping people find and developers make. And they already have some existing properties which have been redone. So yeah, that was a really interesting talk about moving people to the rural areas and getting second homes, or moving out from the urban area full time into the rural areas. He's been doing it for a long time, so he had a lot of great advice. All right. How are we doing? Everybody hanging in there? I'm going to try to get through 2 more of these screens, 3 more if I can. And then Joan's going to be back at 3 o'clock, and we're going to talk a bit more, have a few more questions, and then almost done. Hang in there. So interesting though, isn't it? For me too, it's really interesting to go back over the old series and to talk about these great talks and all these great insights from people. I really appreciate all the guests donating their time and expertise to us to spark new ideas and inspire us. Karen Hill Anton. This was a great talk with author and a longtime columnist of the Japan Times, Karen Hill Anton, and about her book. And I really enjoyed reading her book because I love traveling, and I love traveling with my kids. And in her book, she's talking about traveling around Europe, really hard to travel in areas, driving across Europe with a kid, all the crazy experiences they had, and then coming to Japan and living in a dojo and having all these strict rules of how they were supposed to live, and then moving to their own house in the rural area, and all of her experiences raising kids and living in the rural area as pretty much the only foreigner in that area, and learning calligraphy and working with the PTA. Lots of great stories from Karen. I know she has inspired many of us who have raised families as international residents in Japan. She has inspired us that it's a great thing to do, and so many great insights from her. She has forged the path, beaten the path for us to make it easier, given us great advice. Next, talking to Luvu Huang. Now, Luvu had some great ideas about remodeling restaurants to make it more natural light coming in and making it more appealing to people passing by on the outside. So a lot of Japanese businesses are very dark in the front. You can't really see in. And one of the restaurants, he helped with the design to make a big windows in the front so people could see in, but also so the light at night could spill outside onto the dark street and be very welcoming for people. He was a very innovative guy in terms of food styling and restaurant design, and he tried some food trucks for a while in Tokyo area. So he had some great insights into that food culture, food restaurant business culture that I hadn't heard of before. Next, talking with Ollie Horn. So like Bobby Judo before, they work together on Japan by River Cruise podcast. And I joined their podcast, got to know them a little bit, and we're going to do a workshop together in April 10th and 11th. So if you're interested in doing a workshop with Ollie and Bobby, mark your calendars for next month. Next, talking with Angela Ortiz. I've talked with Angela a few times in the series, and this time with Angela and Nicholas, talking about their cycle trip. Angela founded the nonprofit called Place to Grow, and I'm on the advisor committee now, and they're doing some great work for the last 10 years in the Tohoku area to help disaster-stricken communities to rebuild. And So on this cycle trip they did, it was really hard. Lots of big hills they talk about, but they also had some great views, great connections with locals, and a great chance for Angela to reconnect with some of the people in the local communities that she's been helping through her nonprofit for many years. We have a chance to talk to Angela next week on the 10th to talk about the 10 years of Place to Grow, her nonprofit, and see lots of great photos of the work that they've done to support the local people as they rebuild over the last 10 years. Thank you, Angela and Nick. And Nick has a great YouTube channel, and they're both really into fitness. And so that was really fun talking with them both. Next, talking with Louise George Kitaka. So Louise George did the book together with, I'm spacing now, Louise and who was it? They wrote a book together. Melody, I believe. Let's see. Yes, Melody Cook and Louise wrote the book together to give guidance to families who were looking for information about schools for their kids growing up in Japan, and really great advice from lots of different perspectives about schooling in Japan. And we had a great discussion. Louise has also written a bunch of interesting articles for different magazines and newspapers around Japan. So it was great talking with her. Yukio Matsuzaki Smith and I talked about her business Kamakura Mind. Now, I love the Kamakura area. There's another talk we had more recently, which I mentioned earlier, Kamakura by the Sea, a B&B, a place to stay in Kamakura. And Kamakura Mind, Yukio's business, is to introduce experiences, hard to experience experiences in Japan for international visitors. So really unique things like making incense pouches, making the temple books, putting fabric on the outside and doing the papers together, making chopsticks, using the lacquer, lacquer polish on the outside of the chopsticks, or learning that artisanship. So she has many connections to local artisans, and she's able to create these unique experiences for visitors to Kamakura. And during coronavirus, she hasn't been able to continue them. So she's been doing these monthly boxes, gift boxes, made from the artisans from the classes from the local area. And they're really amazing gift boxes, really unique experiences. It'd be wonderful to take part in. Next, talking with Rochelle Kopp. Rochelle has joined the series a couple times, talking about intercultural, international relationships in the business world in Japan, which she has a lot of expertise about. She runs a consulting company. She's also a professor and written many books. And she has experience in the Silicon Valley in California, and a lot of experiences in businesses in Japan. So she often is able to communicate how businesses in Japan should adopt strategies from Silicon Valley, as well as how Japanese workers in America can adapt to the American style of business there. So really interesting and very useful insights in terms of international business from Rochelle Kopp. Matt and Hiroko here talking about Yurei. This was on Halloween, and I love Halloween, so I wore a few different masks during our talk. And we learned about Yurei, Japanese ghosts. Yurei are really scary. there are some really scary and strange stories about Japanese ghosts. Really worth watching. And if you're interested, definitely buy the book Yurei Attack. Next, talking with Melissa Mills. Melissa Mills is in Australia, but like the other Australians in the series so far, have so many connections to Japan. And Melissa has so many great stories of visiting breweries in Japan, sake breweries, and she has such a deep knowledge of the process. She studied it, but she used to be a dentist, so she has completely redefined her career and shifted to sake, a passion for sake. And she helped do an online workshop for people in Australia to make their own sake, which was really fun to hear about. We can't do that in Japan, but in Australia they were able to make doboroku, homebrew sake, and had some interesting stories. Next, Kama and Blowy. So I joined Kama and Blowy's video as I walked around Miyajima Island on their channel, and they joined me and talked about their bro ventures, so their brother adventures, as they collaborate from Australia and Japan, making videos together as they walk and talk. And I thought that was wonderful. Family dynamic collaboration. All right, finished. I think this is maybe the last one we have time for. So I've got David here. David Douglas Stewart is part of the Kama and Blowy duo with his brother, who we talked about. He's also a photographer and filmmaker. Rekha Farkas is an avid cyclist in the Hiroshima area. We actually had a chance to cycle together, and she's got great stories about cycling in Japan and her love of cycling around the Hiroshima area. And we talked about coding with Tsuyoshi Domoto and his experience abroad as he's Japanese, but he spent some time abroad with nonprofits and helping small communities with microfinance and fair trade. So some interesting stories there. Alicia Ivalich, she has the most popular podcast download, celebrating and promoting creativity. She has a great channel called Non-Native Creative, where she interviews innovators and entrepreneurs who are doing interesting things in new ways, creating new kinds of content. And that's a really interesting channel and an interesting talk. Talking with John Speary. John Speary, like Ian Davey earlier in the series, live in the Shiga area near Lake Biwa. And John had some great videos from the middle of the night that he had set the camera and caught wild animals like boars and even bears and deer and raccoons coming around his chickens and around his farm and around his house at night. So we were talking about his raising chickens and doing worm composting and starting to be a hunter as well. Interesting insights there. Talking with Scott Chilin Kansai of Tesla Quest. We both have Model 3 Tesla electric cars, and so we were talking about our first year experience. We had an earlier episode in the first 100 with Scott talking about getting the Model 3, why did we choose the car, and issues we've had with charging and basic use. It's just an adjustment from a gas car, but definitely something we're both enjoying. I had a chance to talk to Derek Westman. We're both on Twitter. We're Twitter friends, and he's always got some great tweets As a translator and as a TV show host, he's always got interesting tweets about Japanese culture. It looks like Joan is about to join again. Let's see. I've just got 2 more quick ones, and then we'll get Joan in here. John Stolenmeyer told us a lot about traditional Japanese carpentry. His talk and the talk with Asby Brown about architecture and Japanese traditional temple carpentry is really closely related. And John did an internship in Kyoto with a famous temple carpenter and architect and learned a lot. And then now he's working in Okayama. And he had some amazing stories about using traditional techniques, fitting the wood hinges together, like Asby talked about. Also, injuries that he's had using the traditional tools. But his love of the experience of wood making and carpentry using traditional Japanese techniques. And so interesting and inspiring. I love hearing of people taking that apprenticeship and taking that knowledge on, because these artisans, these people doing traditional Japanese techniques, is decreasing year by year. So it's wonderful to hear his perspective, so passionate about it, coming from the outside and living and working in Japan. Kyle Holzhuter, who adopted one of our kitties that we rescued, also talked about plastering earlier in the series. In the top 100, he was talking about permaculture. He runs the Kaminomi Permaculture Center in Okayama, and here in this episode he's talking about his mastering or his art and teaching of plastering. Here's John. Hi, John.
Hey!
Thanks for joining. Where are you? Wait. I need to add
Am I here?
Yay!
Yay!
There you are.
All right. Okay, here's the big moment. Am I interrupting something?
No, just finished. Just
Just
finished. Probably as much as I can get through. I've got one more slide, but we might not get there.
Okay. All right. So I see you started early.
This is water.
I'm
This is
just teasing you.
water.
I brought some wine. I'm ready. Well,
Are you
I'm ready
ready?
for a small glass. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go grab a beer. I will be right back. I think it's
Okay.
time. I only have 20 more minutes.
Oh, nice. Okay. Really? I thought she had like. Okay, whatever. I tell you, we're gonna go visit her.
Here it comes. Wow, talking for 1 hour and talking for 3 hours is very different.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling for you. So, I mean, I've been working, but I was like, oh, joy. Yeah.
I thought it would be completely fine, and of course it was fine, but man, it's a long time. Thank you for the audience as well. Back to your question that you asked me earlier, is there anyone that I really like to talk to? I haven't talked to anybody about beer.
Oh, Joy, you should absolutely talk to the Cadrones at Kohachi Beer Works.
Okay.
They are very close to you. I wrote an article about them, but they are A, the cutest couple ever. B, they're cat people. C, they make incredible beer. It's Yulian and Nobuko.
Wait a minute.
They are on the
Cutest
list.
couple ever?
They are. After us.
After you.
us.
After you.
Okay, that's
Cheers.
fine.
Cheers.
Cheers! Congratulations.
Bye. Thanks everybody for helping me get to 200. Woohoo!
Oh, and so we're like live chatting at the moment?
Yes,
Awesome.
we are.
Okay. So then we have something else for you. Hold on, please.
Oh, Hiroshima Neighborhood Brewing, Tina says.
Oh, that's good too. Okay, here we go. Joy, are you
Yeah.
ready?
It means you can drink. Yes, Tina.
All right. Happy 200th episode to you. Join in.
Happy
200th episode to you. Happy 200th episode to you. Happy 200th episode to you.
Yay!
Okay, Joy, blow out the candle. Blow again. Oh, look at that. It's a miracle.
Oh, amazing. How did it get all the way to you?
I don't know. Cats. Magic.
That's amazing.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my voice is going.
I bet it is. You poor thing.
I was surprised. I was teaching university 90-minute classes for how many years? Over 20 years. And sometimes you have classes back to back. So I thought I'd be fine, but woo.
Yeah, well, I think there's a different, when you're doing this, it's like there's a different amount of not tension or attention, but also you're giving a lot more. Like if you had a class, you could say, okay, kids, and now you're going to do this activity.
That is true.
And you can't really do that with this.
That is true.
So,
that is
that's
true.
the tricky
But
part.
the audience has been great. I've had lots of great comments. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So I was going to ask one more question. Oh, earlier I gave information about the cats' names. So I think that could be the last quiz question because I've already told you. So anybody paying attention? Anybody know? What are the kitties' names? First person is the winner. Dun, 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 dun. And, while I have a little break and drink. So
yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
I could talk about the schedule next week. We have a few more minutes. So, Asby Brown again on Monday.
Oh, very nice. And yeah. And who else?
And Tuesday, talking with Robert Blakemore about using worms in composting.
Oh, very nice.
Vermiculture,
is Robert
is
Blakemore
it?
in Japan?
Vermiculture. Yeah, he's in Japan.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday at 11 a.m. we have Angela Ortiz, who runs Place to Grow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Tina's got it. TikTok Garrett. Is it Lonnie? Oh, you've got it. You're perfect. And Chris is the mom. Oh, my goodness. You've got all the prizes today. Good job.
You just send a bulk package. You know, I still have to tell you too, the that masklet that I won it or something during one of the things. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is really amazing. And it's I get so many compliments on it, which
nice.
You know, does not often happen with masks usually, but I think that one, it's so beautiful.
Well, that was Clementine and my combination idea, but she's making it herself, and she repurposes the kimono material. She is going to be doing a workshop for us at the end of this month on the 28th. So that's
really?
Coming up this month. She's going to teach us how to make incense pouches. So reuse old kimono material and make an incense pouch.
Very nice.
Yeah, she's very talented.
Yeah, her stuff is super beautiful. I have to admit that I've been deeply tempted on multiple occasions. I haven't made a move for it yet, but I spend a lot of time gazing and drooling over things.
Yeah, let me find her picture. Was she in the top 10? Yeah, she was the number 2.
Oh, wow.
Talk in the series, Clementine Sandner. And then we talked again later on. She introduced the masklet. Yeah, so if you search masklet on my feed, on my channel, you'll find it. But yeah, she's so beautiful, right? And the masklet idea is to have a bracelet, so somewhere you can contain it when you're not using it, and then whip it out. We might want to change the bracelet design a little bit because it's a little bit hard to get on and off, right?
Oh, okay.
But it's, it's work in progress. But I think it's beautiful as is too, right?
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah, I love it, actually.
Nice.
And it's
so
nice
great to
because
hear.
it's sort of like my special occasion mask, like.
Yeah, me too.
If I want to feel a little bit dressed up.
I got one, and it's like an orange and white kimono material. So it's my dress up mask.
That's right. Yeah. That's fun. It's really fun. But yeah, I love those.
Yeah, great. So we've got about 10 more minutes. Let me see if there was any other details I wanted to drop. So I mentioned earlier the top 100, the top 10 downloads of the podcast.
Oh.
So Alicia Ivalich has come in number 1, the most downloaded episode. She talks about her non-native creative series.
Oh.
Yeah, and then Refugees Support Through Stories with Jane Best. Do you know Jane?
Right.
From Refugees Empowerment International, REI now. They used to be RIJ, now REI.
Yeah, that's right. And I need to talk to her about something else. So actually, I'm really glad you mentioned her.
Oh, good. And then the very first episode, Growing Your Own Food in Japan with Flo, Blaze, Thomas, and John. So that was a great episode. That's in the top 4.
Nice.
And then Echo Di Eco with Katie O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cute Wash, Poison Gas Island Okunoshima. It's quite a heavy one, but that's a very popular download.
Wow.
And then Building Sustainable Fashion Brand in Japan. So Clementine Sandner, who we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And then Forest Therapy and Favorite Organizations in Japan, Stacy Kurokawa. And Insights into Japanese Business Culture with my sister, Ruth Marie Jarman.
Very cool.
And the last in the top 10, Taking Tatami to the Next Level with Kenji Yamada, Tatami Artist.
Very nice.
Yeah. Did you see that one? I love that one.
I don't think I've seen that one yet.
And Paprika Girl did such a beautiful job doing the translation. So that one's one of the few that's bilingual.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. Some of the first ones in the series, my son was doing translation. I think he only did like 3. And then he's like, just do it in English, Mom. You don't need me. That's enough. Like once he realized that I was going to do it a lot, he's like, yeah, no, do your own thing.
Mom, be independent.
I mean, he's 18. He's so talented. He's so bilingual. It's so nice to use him, right? But
yeah,
he actually started his own live streaming after I did. And yeah, he did a 24-hour live stream.
Jeepers.
I'm only challenging just over 3 hours. So 24 hours, that's a different story.
That is. Yeah, that's a bit much. I mean, good for him. Good on him. I mean, but yeah.
Can I just get through this last slide that I couldn't get through, and you can comment if you've seen any of these? I just feel like I need to, because in the 100 episode, we talked about the top 100, the first 100. Yep. But today I've been focusing on after 100 because I haven't had a chance to talk about them again.
Yeah.
So Chuck Besher was 91, just under 100. But, so I need the next one. Okay. Oh, so did you ever hear of Coco Lo Travel, Peko Box?
Yes, I watched that one, part of that.
Okay, so he was he was number 100.
Nice.
And that was so inspiring, and it's one of the travel talks that I enjoy doing so much. But of course, you just feel for anybody in the hospitality and travel industry so much, because there's basically the whole industry around the world is on pause right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're trying to do like a box every month where they send out to their customers around the world, but they're incorporating a video. So they go and interview the local artisans. They take
Very
a video,
nice.
and
That's
then
right.
that is the product that they send in the box.
Mm-hmm.
It's very ambitious, but I love
Yeah.
it. Great, great idea.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So I think that's what people are looking for. Like we kind of talked about when I was first here earlier today, like it's those stories that everyone wants to hear because it's the story that really, that sort of connects you to this other person, whether you can really speak to them or not. Like you're communicating through an object or through food. I mean, at least this is what I tell my students in my class that about food, like tell me the story behind this food. And then they can also kind of get into it a little bit more. And next thing you know, they're like, yeah, they're going crazy with their stories and interviewing their grandmothers. It's very nice. So yeah, it's perfect.
That's great. And that's the same for guiding, right? That's what I always tell the guides as I'm doing training. You have to tell stories. It's not just about history, the names and the dates. Like who's really going to remember that? But it's about, I mean, some people love that. If some people love that, do it. But what people are really craving when they visit Japan is the more personal stories. Like, what is your favorite thing to eat? Oh, I love wagashi from this small shop. They love that. That's what I love when I travel, right?
Right.
And I often say, what is the connection to the visitor? And I think in the series, I'm trying to do that too, right? Like for having it live so people can add questions and comments. Like in your life, how does this connect to what we're talking about in Japan?
Exactly.
And like Asby has said so many times, Japan can be so inspirational for people around the world.
Right.
Maybe because they respect kind of traditional ways and cultural ways and artisanship still, right? That's still very respected. And so people abroad can appreciate that, I think.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. I think that's really true. Yeah, there's something, well, it also makes people abroad can appreciate it, but it makes them look a little bit more closely, like at their own, okay, this is my theory anyway, but it makes them look more closely at what is right around them, so you see that, at least that's the effect it's kind of had on me. Like I see how people interact with food here, for example, and then I really think about at home, because I think it's pretty natural to do sort of a compare and contrast. And then you think, oh, and it's not necessarily better or worse, but it's like you see how by seeing this other culture, you sort of see your own in a different light. And that I think can be really inspiring. I think that's right on the money, actually.
Yeah. And I think also just something completely outside your norm, right? And then it kind of sparks an idea for your norm for some reason, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the great thing about virtual travel, right? So people, no matter where you are, can join us in Japan talking about Japanese things. And it's kind of like traveling. It's kind of refreshing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Yeah, it's very refreshing. And that has been sort of, I think, for me, a kind of silver lining to all of this. Like, being able to, like, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't know you. Or, maybe we would have met sort of in passing somewhere along the way. But I think the pandemic sort of, because of the virtual stuff, it kind of brings people together in this new way that otherwise might not have happened. And so, yeah, I think that's been wonderful, really wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And how did we meet? I was trying to think of that.
We met, I think it was, you put a call out on Twitter. You were looking for people, and Selena Hoy, a fellow writer. Actually, you've also interviewed her. She's an amazing writer and essayist.
And Selena has had connections to other guests, right? Like,
yes.
with Kathleen, the astrophysicist, and they rescued cats together, and then connection with you, and then Selena and Melinda Joe as well, right? Like,
yeah, that's right. Sorry, I have a cat I thought wanted me to open the window, but he's going to a different window, so that's fine. So anyway, everything's worked out for the cat, so it's good.
It's all about the cat.
Yeah, well, it's the most important thing, So
we have 1 more minute, not even 1 more minute, and we've done it. Oh
wow.
My goodness. Any final questions, anyone? Almost 200 minutes. I don't know if I can do a 300-minute one. I don't know if I'm going to do another one of these marathons. But I hope in some way there have been some interesting things for people joining today. Thank you so much.
I'm sure there has
been. I hope there's
something.
Sure there has been. Yeah. But it was,
without a doubt.
It was nice for me to revisit a lot of these old talks. And I promise this year that I will do more of that. Like, I will try to take clips from the old ones and try to repurpose them on different social media just to give people a taste of some of the great ideas.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Because it's hard. It's hard to watch a whole hour talk, right? Or listen to a whole hour talk. Especially if you're not sure about that topic. So if I take short clips and I give you a little taste of what they were talking about, hopefully then people will be more invested in trying it out.
Yeah, it's like a sampler box of candy.
Yeah, exactly. So much great content there.
There is.
Paul says, how are you feeling? I'm feeling good because I did it.
Yay!
Thank you so much, John. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
No worries. My pleasure. It was fun.
200 episodes. What a year. What a great year. Yeah. The question now is, do I call 201 or do I call it season 2 next? That's the big question.
It could almost be the start of season 3, frankly.
Yeah. Because it's been a year. It's been like a year. So it seems like that's a good cutoff for season 1.
Oh, I see. Yep. Okay.
And then start season 2 with the new year and start with number 1. But then there's something nice about continuing the numbers as well. So I'll have to think about it. If you have any ideas or comments, please let me know. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Take care.
All right.
See you next week.
Joy.
Thank you, Joan.
All right. See ya.
Bye.